Chapter 87. Back then, he had joined Star Dragon to avoid being hunted down by the Germinal organization, to find a temporary shelter, and to obtain advanced knowledge. The face simulator was the escape route that Han Xiao had chosen long ago. Once he created the face simulator, it was almost impossible for the Germinal organization to track him down. Thus, he no longer had to worry about the Germinal organization finding him. This way, he would have the capital to act on his own and would not have to stay in a corner for safety. Provoking the leader would make the Germinal organization focus on Star Dragon and lead them to the wrong direction. It was definitely not because of his bad taste. Definitely not. Even if he wanted to use the Germinal organization's power to attack them, he would not have to put himself under Star Dragon's control. Star Dragon seemed to be very gentle to him, but of course, it was not completely at ease. There was a hidden satellite tracking device in his encrypted phone, which he had discovered long ago. Now it was finally time to dismantle it. In the last 3 months before the open beta, he had to quickly level up and accumulate more capital. There were countless missions on the planet, and they were all treasures. After working with Division 13 and accumulating capital, there was no need for him to feign civility anymore. The world was huge, and he could go anywhere he wanted. His plan was closely linked. As a chaotic person who changed his mind constantly, in Han Zhao's eyes, the faction favorability of Star Dragon was not worth mentioning compared to the growth of his strength. Furthermore, he knew that once version 2.0 arrived, not only Star Dragon, but even the Six Nations and the Germinal organization would have to give him some benefits. Although the major forces were in a stable position right now and were scheming against each other, when a planet-level catastrophe swept across the planet, the countries and forces would realize that their demands for their own interests were hollow and meaningless in the face of the survival of the entire civilization. Their position right now was like a bubble under the sun. It was colorful on the surface, but it could burst with a single poke. It was like a flower in a beautiful dream. The first version has not started yet. Version 1.0 will take 7 months in real life, which is equivalent to 3.5 years in-game. Plus, the in-game time span is 1 year, which means that there are still close to 5 years before the second version of the mutation disaster. The mutation disaster is a disaster, and it is best to avoid the most dangerous and chaotic period at the start of version 2.0. Therefore, within 5 years, I have to find out what is useful to me on Blue Star and find a way to temporarily leave this planet. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. A new notification appeared on the interface. Destroy Dark Crow Valley. Completion, 100%. Contribution, 72%. You have received 360,000 EXP. Mission completed. It seemed that Hesla's army had ended the battle. Han Xiao was very satisfied. If he had not killed Pan Kuang and the others, the completion rate would only be around 40 to 50%. His efforts had not been in vain. He had infiltrated the base, gathered intelligence, and planted 2 spies, Lin Yao and Lambert. He had a complete grasp of the enemy's movements, which was why his contribution rate was so high. If he had not put in so much effort, his reward would have been reduced by at least 2/3. Faction Mission Dark Crow Valley Operation has been completed. You have completed the following objectives: Recon I, Recon 2, Dark Forest Assassin, Direct Confrontation, Decapitation 2, Decapitation 3, Destroy Dark Crow Valley. Calculating Mission. Calculation complete. Performance rating. Excellent. Star Dragon's Homeland Strategic Defense Bureau favorability increased by 1,120 points. Current relationship. Friendly, 1, 370/3000. Germinal organization favorability decreased by 500 points. Current relationship. Hatred, -1500/-3000. There's actually a random reward. My luck is not bad this time. Han Xiao was slightly happy. Large-scale missions and series of missions would have a mission rating after completion. The probability of triggering a random reward with an excellent rating was only 30%, which was not common. The random reward for a rating was a type of reward. It could be experience points, items, skills, attribute points, potential points, and so on. After determining the type of reward, A few random rewards would be randomly selected. The type of reward you have received this time is Talent. Randomizing. Randomization complete. Please select one of the 3 talents below. Fortified Physique. Plus 400 health. Plus 4% resistance quick eyes and hands. Plus 6 DX. Plus 5% attack speed fortified mind. Plus 5 MYS. Plus 8% mental resistance. Han Xiao tapped his chin lightly and fell into deep thought. The 3 talent effects were quite normal. Fortified Physique increased HP, which was suitable for MTs. Most of the time, Han Xiao was mainly a ranged attacker. Furthermore, he had the magnetically controlled retractable armor, so he did not need much HP. Quick eyes and hands was not bad. Dexterity affected all aspects of ranged attacks, such as accuracy, critical strike rate, attack speed, and so on. Choosing this talent could increase his damage output by 8 to 10%. Fortified Mind was only needed by mages or psychics. It was not useful for Han Xiao. Han Xiao made his choice. Quick eyes and hands. You have received the talent Quick Eyes and Hands. Han Xiao looked at the interface. He did not use the 12 free attribute points he had gained from leveling up. He had put all of them into intelligence, which was currently the highest attribute he had. Grade A mission, Dust of the Fallen Seeds, had increased the progress by 8%. Although it did not seem like much, Han Xiao knew that destroying the Dark Crow Valley base was equivalent to destroying an important bridge for future players to join the Germinal organization. It would greatly reduce the Germinal organization's future expansion. The potential effect would be at least 10 to 15%. When players chose a faction, most of them would choose the nearest faction. However, the Germinal organization leader did not know the importance of the Dark Crow Valley base. He was only upset that such a large base had been destroyed. Han Xiao provided information for other forces to attack the Germinal organization. The indirect progress gained was less than the progress gained by attacking the Germinal organization. This was a matter of contribution rate. However, if the forces wanted to destroy the Germinal organization personally, they would not be able to keep up with the Germinal organization's expansion speed. Therefore, the best choice was to spread information about the Germinal organization. The mission completion requirement was at least 20% progress. Pursuing perfection was not worth the loss. It was better to quit while one was ahead. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. It's time to change the way I provide information. After completing the mission, it was time to get down to business. Han Xiao contacted Lin Yao. What's the situation now? Brother Xiao, the Hesla army has seized all the resources in the Dark Crow Valley base. They have captured a few hundred Germinal organization members, including Doman. Unfortunately, Pan Kuang and Ji Jie escaped. What's the Hesla army doing? They're cleaning up the battlefield. They will probably retreat to the border tomorrow. Okay, I got it. After cleaning up the battlefield, the Hesla army set up camp to rest and prepare to leave the next day. Lin Yao and Lambert met up with the rest. The Division 13 members came up to them and praised their contributions. The younger generation will surpass us in time. This was Ma Qingyang. Lin, your teammates did well. This was Di Su. Well done. They are so reliable. This was the idlers who were too lazy to come up with a name. Lin Yao scratched the back of his head and said embarrassedly, Brother Xiao was the one who commanded our operations. Thus, the Division 13 members changed the target of their praise. Qi Baijia touched his chin and decided to praise Han Xiao's contributions in the battle report. However, he suddenly realized that Han Xiao was not back yet. Where is he? Maybe he was delayed by something. The sky gradually darkened, but Han Xiao still did not appear. Why is he not back yet? Lia Lin was puzzled. She pushed Lin Yao and urged him to contact Han Xiao quickly. Lin Yao said helplessly, I've tried to contact him more than 40 times, but he has not replied. The long night passed. The next morning, when the Hesla army set off, Han Xiao still did not appear. This unusual situation made the Division 13 members think of many possibilities. Did Han Xiao return to the border first? Zhang Wei suddenly thought. Everyone thought about it carefully. Han Xiao's actions had always been capricious. Perhaps he did not think that there was a need to gather. That was not impossible. Everyone followed the army back with worry. The Hesla soldiers looked relaxed. Their formation was sparse, and they were not vigilant at all. In the middle of the army, Karl sat in the command vehicle. He was frowning as he considered a serious problem. He did not perform well in this operation. Instead, he made mistakes in his command and caused unnecessary casualties. This would lower the evaluation of his ability by the higher-ups. If he wanted to increase his military merits, he had to highlight his importance in this operation. If I can share the credit of Division 13, Karl had an idea. Perhaps he could write in the report that Han Shao allowed his teammates to infiltrate the base to obtain classified information under his command. This way, he could highlight his role as a commander. This idea is feasible. After the mission ended, Division 13 would leave. It was impossible for him to refute this idea. His report would be presented to the higher-ups of Hesla, and no one would know what he had written. Karl's eyes lit up. This contribution might be a good foundation for his plan to become a general. At this moment, there was a commotion outside the vehicle. Karl realized that the army had stopped. "Colonel, there are 2 corpses in front. They look like Pan Kwang and Ji Jia." Karl was shocked. He quickly got out of the vehicle and saw 2 corpses lying side by side on the ground. They were the 2 leaders of the Dark Crow Valley base. The soldiers were shocked. They still remembered Pan Kwang's valiant performance not long ago. They did not expect him to be killed. "Who did it? Who put the corpses here?" Karl asked loudly. The soldiers looked at each other, but no one answered. They had just found out. The Division 13 members heard the commotion and were shocked. It could only be Han Shao. He did it. Why did he put the corpses on the road? This is a military merit. Why did he give it to these Hesla people? Karl was overjoyed. The leader's corpse was another military merit. He waved his hand and asked his men to wrap the corpses up and bring them back. Just as the soldiers moved the corpses away, the sound of a landmine being triggered could be heard. Landmine! The surrounding soldiers turned pale with fright. They quickly lay down in all directions, and the encirclement dispersed. Karl was shocked. He only had time to throw himself to the ground. However, after waiting for a few seconds, there was no explosion. Then, a brave soldier stood up and carefully dug out the landmine under the corpse. He weighed it in his hand and found that it was very light. This is not a live bomb. It's empty. Only then did the soldiers realize that they had been tricked, and they were all a little angry. "This is not funny at all. This is too evil. My pants are wet from shock." The Division 13 members had a weird expression on their faces. They did not know whether to laugh or not. Leah Lin muttered, "This really sounds like something Han Shao would do." Karl got up. His neat uniform was stained with dirt and grass. He looked very pathetic. His face was pale. He guessed that it was Han Zhao's doing. He felt that it was a prank to embarrass him. He said angrily, "What a lame trick." Bang! The sound of a gunshot could be heard from afar. A bloody hole appeared on Karl's temple. The bullet that had pierced through his body left a trail of blood behind. Karl's eyes were wide open. He did not seem to know what had happened. He was not mentally prepared. His eyes were filled with disbelief and longing for life. His pupils dilated. His body swayed and fell to the ground. Just a moment ago, he was still fantasizing about military merits and a bright future. Even when he died, he could not believe that he would die on the eve of dawn. At this moment, whether it was the dumbfounded expressions of the Division 13 members or the indignant expressions of the Hesla soldiers, they all froze. Their expressions quickly turned into horror. On a cliff far away, Han Shao raised his head from behind the scope of his sniper rifle with a calm expression on his face. "You have to pay for what you did." Chapter 88. While the troops were camping at night, Han Shao went to the road ahead of time and chose an ambush spot. He used the corpses of Pan Kwang and Ji Jia as bait. The corpses of the 2 base leaders would definitely lure Karl out of the car. As long as Karl got out of the car, he would fall into his trap. He hit on a cliff in the distance and used a booby trap to make the soldiers scatter in all directions. This made the formation more sparse, making it easier for him to aim at Celtic. Because of the presence of the 2 corpses, even if he did not show up, the people of Hesla would be able to guess that he was the culprit. Han Shao did not panic at all because he did not have any concrete evidence. Everything was just a guess. Even if Hesla protested and condemned him, as long as Division 13 did not admit to it, they would not be able to hold him responsible. It was exactly the same as Carl's plan to accidentally kill them. Perhaps the person who assassinated Carl was a fish that escaped from the Dark Crow Valley. You like to play dirty, so do I. Han Shao pulled the bolt and threw out the smoking shell. He picked it up and put it in his pocket without leaving any trace. Carl had threatened his life. When the dust settled, it would be time to settle the score. Brother Shao used to be a player who would fight if he was unconvinced. If someone wanted to kill him, no matter who the other party was, he would definitely fight back without a second thought. He would change his stance and fight back. Pooey, he would fight back to the death. Through the scope, Han Shao saw that the Hesla troops were in chaos. The soldiers were shocked and angry at the same time. They got on the car and rushed toward the source of the bullet. Han Shao folded the sniper rifle and put it in his backpack calmly. He had chosen this location so that it would be easier for him to escape after the assassination. As soon as he turned around and jumped off the cliff, the feeling of weightlessness hit him. He slammed the button on his backpack, and two thin metal folding wings unfolded from his backpack. They quickly lifted his falling body and glided in the air toward the forest below the cliff. Cloud swallowed gliding wings. The Hesla soldiers came to the cliff and could only watch as the figure of a swallow disappeared from their sight. The people of Division 13 were shocked. They did not expect Han Shao to be so daring as to kill the commander of Hesla directly. Killing a high-ranking military officer in Hesla's territory was no different from killing a high-ranking military officer of Hesla. What was the meaning of this? There's nothing you don't dare to do. Chi-Bai-Jia's heart was in his mouth. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the Hesla soldiers returning empty-handed. It's good that they have escaped. At least they did not leave behind any evidence. That way, there will be room for excuses. Wait. If Han Shao hides and doesn't appear, won't we be the ones to take his place? Everyone's eyes suddenly widened. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that this was something Han Shao would do. How could someone cheat to such an extent? Are you a F***king scapegoat expert? The enraged Hesla soldiers raised their guns and chased the Division 13 members into cars and placed them under house arrest. Hesla was furious when the adjutant reported the news of Carl's death. The biggest suspect was Division 13, so the Hesla agents had no choice but to interrogate them. The people of Division 13 insisted that they did not know anything, and the Hesla agents were furious. Winna felt helpless when faced with this group of stubborn Division 13 members. Everyone knew that Carl was the culprit, but there was no evidence. Not even a bullet shell could be found. They could only interrogate him over and over again in vain. Due to Division 13's identity, they could not use torture to extort confession. The Hesla agents could only gloss over the condemnation from the higher-ups. This was the dirty trick that Carl had wanted to play. Now, the Hesla agents were feeling helpless. The intelligence chief of Division 13 took a private jet and quickly arrived at the border of Hesla. Since Star Dragon's higher-ups were there, Hesla had no choice but to release the Division 13 agents. The intelligence chief led everyone out of the interrogation room and returned to the private jet. After confirming that they were all on the same side, he asked Chi-Bai-Jia to report the details. After listening to the report, Chi-Bai-Jia said helplessly, "He is too good at causing trouble." Fortunately, he did not leave behind any evidence. Otherwise, the Hesla agents would not let him off so easily. Chi-Bai-Jia was embarrassed. He felt that as the staff officer of the team, he had to take responsibility for this. The intelligence chief looked at him and did not say anything. He secretly recalled the reaction of the Bureau when they received the news. They believed that Carl's actions were actually ordered by the higher-ups of Hesla. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain why Hesla had deliberately sent a radical officer to command the operation. They were very dissatisfied with Hesla's insidious actions. However, Hesla had gone for wool and come home shorn. Instead, one of their officers was killed by Han Shao, and they could only suffer in silence. This guy did a good job. The intelligence chief nodded silently. This time, even the hardliners had nothing to say. Instead, they admired Han Zhao's actions. Since he dared to plot against Star Dragon, it would be his loss if he did not kill one of their people. However, admiration was one thing. During the internal meeting not long ago, the department heads unanimously agreed that they should not continue to indulge Han Xiao. They said that they should not let Han Xiao out of their sight again. If an accident happened to a valuable source of intelligence, the losses would outweigh the gains. All along, Han Xiao had been very cooperative, so they had been more tolerant of Han Xiao. However, this joint operation had gone wrong, and it was a wake-up call for them. They were determined to reject all of Han Zhao's future operations. This proposal was unanimously passed, and even the conservatives agreed. The Bureau was willing to cooperate with Han Xiao, but before he gave them all the information, they could not let him out of the control of the headquarters. The intelligence chief collected his thoughts and glanced at the team of agents. He then lowered his head and looked at his watch. "Why is Han Xiao not back yet?" he asked. Qi Baijia shook his head. "I don't know. Brother Xiao contacted me." At this time, Lin Yao suddenly pressed on his earpiece and looked excited. However, in the next second, his expression suddenly changed. The intelligence chief had a bad feeling and asked, "What did he say?" Lin Yao gulped and stammered. Brother Xiao said, "He went out to lie low for a while." "Lie low for a while? That's understandable." The intelligence chief nodded subconsciously. Suddenly, he realized something and his expression changed. "He's not coming back?" Zhang Wei was in disbelief. Liu Lin's eyes widened. Lambert's pupils constricted. Everyone was shocked. This was the rhythm of going solo. There was nothing that he did not dare to do. 20 minutes later, at the headquarters of Division 13, Gu Hui called for an emergency meeting. The chiefs who were not in the headquarters joined the meeting. Everyone had a serious expression on their faces. "Han Xiao ran away," Gu Hui said solemnly. Everyone was stunned. "Did he betray us?" "I'm not sure. Before this, he killed a Hesla officer. Perhaps he was afraid of the consequences, so he ran away. However, the probability of this happening is not high," the intelligence chief said. The chiefs felt a headache coming on. This reason was not valid. Did Han Xiao think that Star Dragon could not protect him? Did he underestimate them? What about the GPS device installed in his phone? It was left at a location 24 hours ago. Han Xiao found it and threw it away, the internal affairs chief said. "This is a betrayal. He can't have gone far. He could only have gone to the wilderness. We must catch him. We can't confirm if he betrayed us yet." Gu Hui waved his hand. The chiefs were silent. They had planned to wait for him to come back and then keep Han Xiao under control. However, Han Zhao's unexpected escape had completely disrupted their plans. Did he plan this from the beginning? Or did he just do it on the spur of the moment? Was this a betrayal, or was there another reason? If an agent went missing and they couldn't confirm whether it was because of defection or other reasons, the first thing to do was to send someone to track down the other party's tracks and make contact with the target. Through the other party's reaction, they could determine what plan to use. If the target continued to escape or resist, they would be hunted down globally. If the target had a reasonable reason, this would prevent misunderstandings and wrongful killings. The intelligence chief suddenly said, "Latest news that a Germinal organization on the dark web has increased the bounty on Han Xiao by 5 times to 5 million. Everyone was shocked. On the surface, this was a joint operation between two countries. How did the Germinal organization know that Han Xiao was the mastermind? Was there mole? The increase in the bounty meant that the Germinal organization was more determined to kill him. Furthermore, the Germinal organization had determined that Han Xiao was in the West capital. Could Han Xiao have chosen to leave because of this? However, was he not afraid of being targeted by the Germinal organization in the wilderness and being hunted down by the Germinal organization? In the wilderness, the Germinal organization would not have so many concerns. They could directly bombard the area with missiles. He came to Star Dragon to seek protection. Why did he suddenly have the guts to leave now? The chief's question was the same as everyone else's. Gu Hui tapped his fingers on the table and decided on the result of this meeting. We will keep his identity as an agent for the time being and classify him as a missing person. The intelligence department will collect surveillance data, entry and exit records, airport flight records, and train records. We will try to contact Han Xiao and send a search team to find him first. Seconded. 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 On the return flight, the agents of Division 13 frequently glanced at Zhang Wei and the other three sitting in the corner. That was the center of the atmosphere. Zhang Wei's hands were crossed over his nose. His face was solemn, and the veins on his forehead were pulsating. Lambert silently wiped his dagger and did not say a word. Leah Lin's face was filled with anxiety and resentment. She kept shaking her legs, and her black tights outlined the beautiful outline of her long legs. Lin Yao sat in a corner, trembling in fear. He wanted to stay away from the three of them, but he did not dare to do so. This is too much. He just left like that. Does he think of us as his teammates? Leah Lin slammed the table. The sound was so loud that it shocked the other agents who were eavesdropping. Zhang Wei covered half of his face with his hands. His eyes were as lifeless as a salted fish. He said softly, "He modified my armor. No one else knows how to fix it." The eavesdropping agents did not know how to comfort Zhang Wei. This was a sad story. Leah Lin gritted her teeth and said, "He wants me to help him take on business. There are dozens of orders backlogged, and I even gave him the deposit. What am I supposed to do?" The surrounding agents were stunned. Suddenly, they remembered that they had placed orders as well. F***CK. Our deposit. I vouched for him with my reputation. That scammer. Leah Lin's tone was like that of a resentful woman who had been abandoned. She grabbed Lin Yao's arm and pinched it to vent her anger. Lin Yao sucked in a breath of cold air and jumped away like a rabbit. He rubbed the area where he was pinched and said hurriedly, calm down. Lambert suddenly asked, "Do you guys know who he is?" The three of them were stunned. They had been on the same team for so long, but they still did not know Han Zhao's true identity. The guy was always so mysterious. He had never revealed any clues about his identity in front of his teammates. Even the higher-ups kept it a secret. For a moment, everyone was depressed. Leah Lin clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles cracked. She said fiercely, "When I find him, I'll definitely beat him up. P.S. Yesterday was wonderful. There was no such thing as a cute girl. I'm fine. Today is the second watch, as usual. P.S. Thank you to Blue Poppy for your generous reward. Thank you, bro." Chapter 89. 2 days later, in Hesla, Chunfeng City. This was a coastal city near the border. It had an excellent port and took in a large number of cruise ships every day. It was a prosperous city with many skyscrapers. Hesla was mainly based on its navy. There were many coastal cities, and its navy was the strongest in the 6 nations. The 4 continents of planet Aquamarine were separated by an ocean. As the old saying went, whoever had the rebound would. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong script. Let's do it again. Whoever had the control of the sea would have a huge advantage. There were large amounts of energy resources under the sea, such as oil and natural gas. Exploitation of energy resources was the core of Hesla's economy. Han Xiao remembered that Hesla had a secret military plan called the Fourth Response Plan for Major Crises. It was to build many thousand-meter-wide arc motherships. If a country were to face a catastrophe, such as a nuclear war, they would be able to preserve the fire and move the population to the ark, becoming a floating country on the sea. Although this plan ended up benefiting someone else in the end, this kind of pessimistic spirit of being afraid of being annihilated and having a sense of crisis was worth learning. There was a good saying, "Born in sorrow and suffering, die in peace and happiness." It meant that it was better to die than to struggle blindly. There seemed to be something wrong. Not important. At this time, Han Xiao, who had changed his appearance, was staying at the Farian Group's base in Chunfeng City. With the black gold card he had obtained from Matthew, he was treated as a VIP and temporarily had a place to stay. There were still more than 3 months to the open beta, and he could earn the most money by moving around freely. He had the Farian Group supply channel and had a lot of savings. He could buy parts and build machines to gain experience. He did not need orders from others and could produce and sell his own products. Old Man Lu's hidden quest would only be triggered after the open beta started. He had already established a good relationship with the old man, so he was not in a hurry. Han Xiao noted down the main points of his development before the open beta. Firstly, he could trigger missions with generous rewards and obtain some rare skills and talents to increase his strength. Second, obtain a stable supply channel and gain experience by building machines while completing missions. Fourth, do a series of destructive actions against the Germinal organization. Fifth, increase the reward limit of his missions in preparation for the open beta. These should be the main points. Han Xiao put down his pen and pondered. He had many large-scale missions in mind, so the first point was not a problem. The supply of goods was also very simple. Since he had the Black Gold VIP card of the Farian Group, he could purchase their goods. Destroying the Germinal organization was to complete the A-level mission. He already had a preliminary idea. In order to maximize his advantage in intelligence, he had to focus on all the forces that were enemies of the Germinal organization. As for increasing the quota, Han Zhao's goal was to increase the legend level. The EXP reward quota for issuing missions was divided into the maximum quota for a single mission and the total daily quota. The legend level could increase both at the same time, and the total daily quota would be multiplied. It was the most cost-effective. Brother Zhao's legendary points were now 0, but it did not matter. There would be bread, and so would the geoduck. There were 3 ways to obtain legend points. The first was to complete high-grade and rare missions and obtain high contribution points. Usually, only the main mission of a planet would reward legend points. His own A-rank mission, Seed Slumbers in the Dust, belonged to the main mission of a planet. Every planet, not limited to novice planets, had 1 or more main storyline events. For example, the Blue Star in version 1.0 had 2 main storyline events and 1 hidden storyline. The war between the 6 nations and the Germinal organization was one of the main storyline events. The other main storyline would only appear in the early stages of the open beta. As for the hidden storyline, it all depended on luck. This method of obtaining legend points was very time-consuming and difficult. It was impossible to achieve in a short period of time. The second method was very random. It was to do some well-known deeds that were related to the faction. It depended on the specific deeds and varied from person to person. No one had a detailed calculation, and it was not reliable. Han Xiao was interested in the third method, which was also the easiest way to obtain legend points, to be on the top of some ranking lists. Some factions had created a list that was publicly recognized. If one was on the top of the list, they would be able to obtain legend points. However, this was not stable. Once a newcomer took the top spot, the legend points would change hands. This method was the source of legend points for most players. Legend points could increase the number of favorability points of certain factions, give discounts on purchases, and trigger some rare missions. Knock, knock, knock. Han Xiao tapped his fingers on the table, pondered, and scratched his nose. However, before he acted, he had to deal with the burden on his body. Looking at the interface, he had a total of 720,000 EXP. He directly invested it into leveling up, reaching level 30, and his attributes increased again. Apprentice Mechanic had reached the maximum level, and the last level increased his attributes even more. This time was no exception. Leveling up from level 9 to level 10 gave him 90 energy points. Throwing all 6 free attribute points into intelligence, he reached the 100 mark. Traces of clarity appeared in his mind, and he felt that his control of machinery had become easier. Intelligence affected many aspects of a mechanic, such as the speed of creation, the quality of the finished product, and the power bonus of using machinery. For example, a pistol with 20 attack power would have its attack power increased in the hands of a mechanic. Therefore, although other classes could use equipment made by mechanics, the effect would not be as good as the mechanic himself. Apprentice Mechanic, max level. Class advancement requirement. Learn 20 blueprints. The random class advancement requirement this time is very simple. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. He counted and he now knew 12 blueprints. He only needed 8 more. He did not want to use useless blueprints casually. He had made good use of every bit of EXP. After all, the EXP was stored in the interface, so it did not matter if he changed his class advancement later. In the office of the Fabian organization in Morning Wind City, the person in charge, Antonio, had a cigar in his mouth. His fat, bear-like body filled the entire sofa. He blew out a puff of smoke and stared at Han Xiao, who was sitting on the sofa opposite him. At this time, Han Xiao was wearing a black trench coat, and the face simulator simulated the appearance of a middle-aged, unemployed man. He looked ordinary and inconspicuous. This was the face that he was going to use to form a new identity. Han Xiao took out the list of materials and said slowly, "I want the things on this list." Antonio took a look at the list and said, "It's a total of 100,000. Black Gold card is 20% off, so it's 80,000. I also want a Blood Pact Society certificate that belongs to the Darknet." Antonio squinted his eyes and said, 200,000. The Darknet was the underground world's information hub, and the Darknet was the power behind it. They were neutral, did not fight, and did not fight. They developed quietly and followed the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Many factions were partners of the Darknet, and they provided various services to the underground world's members, including but not limited to the purchase of firearms, delivery of supplies, safe houses, information trafficking, bounty killers, mercenaries, and destruction of corpses. The Blood Pact Society was an assassin employment organization operated by the Darknet. With a certificate, one could become a contract assassin and enjoy the various services mentioned above. To Han Xiao, obtaining a certificate was equivalent to opening a faction. The official name of the Blood Pact Society was a little lame, but it had another famous name, the Assassin Alliance. Of course, if one wanted to, they could also call it the Assassin Fellowship, which would make it seem less cool. If players wanted to join the Darknet, they would have to go through a series of complicated and tedious quests. Time was precious to him. Instead of wasting dozens of days, it was better to use money to get a certificate. 200,000 was a huge sum of money to players, but it was not worth mentioning to him. It feels good to have money. Han Xiao sighed. When he was a player, he had to count with his fingers for a long time just to buy a set of materials. He had never experienced the pleasure of spending money like he did now. Antonio arranged a private workshop for him, and the parts and materials were delivered quickly. Han Xiao repaired the durability of the equipment that he had lost in the battle with Pan Quan. What was left was the materials to build new machines. Since I'm going alone, I won't have any teammates to support me. I should try to stay away from danger during this period of time. The sniper style is suitable for me for now. I need to develop a stronger sniper rifle and more new bullets. I need some bombs, traps, anti-vehicle weapons, and lastly, close combat machines. For example, I need some small, hidden, and high-damage weapons. Han Xiao thought for a while, summoned the interface, and began to fuse knowledge. He decided to start with the new bullets. Do you want to fuse knowledge? LV, 3 basic weaponry, LV, 3 basic materials, LV, 2 basic mechanics? This fusion will cost 15,000 EXP. Fusion successful. You have developed shuttle-type penetrating bullet. Do you want to fuse knowledge? LV, 3 basic weaponry, LV, 3 basic materials, LV, 1 basic biochemistry? This fusion will cost 15,000 EXP. Fusion successful. You have developed Haim bullet. Do you want to fuse knowledge? LV, 3 basic weaponry, LV, 3 basic materials, LV, 2 basic optics? This fusion will cost 15,000 EXP. Fusion successful. You have developed dazzling bullet. I'm really a Spitfire now. Han Xiao scratched his head. He still had more than 200,000 EXP left. It was not enough for him to master the sniper style. He had to take it one step at a time. Han Xiao thought for a while and decided to upgrade his core skill, Snipe, to LV 5 to increase his accuracy and range. He had taken a sniper rifle from Hesla's logistics team. The model was called Red Falcon. It was black in color and gray in quality. Its attributes were very average. He immediately started to upgrade it. This time, he focused on power. The Red Falcon's attack power was 92 to 103. Its firing rate was one shot every 2 seconds, and its range was only 600 meters. However, with machinery affinity and snipe, the range was increased to 750 meters, which was more than enough. Han Xiao still had tens of thousands of EXP left. He did not use it, and started to create 3 new types of ammunition. Batches of new bullets were created. The Farian group's lathe equipment was specifically used to create ammunition, which could save more time. This reminded Han Xiao, should I create some mechanical assistance to help me create the parts? He now had the blueprint of the smart ship and more technologies. As long as he increased his basic programming level, he would be able to create simple assistant rangers. However, he did not have a fixed base, so it was not the time to create robots. Antonio walked into the workshop and put a dark gold coin with a unique shape on the table. He said in a deep voice, "Your proof." Han Xiao was slightly happy. This sentence sounded like Yida. You have unlocked a new faction reputation. Chapter 90. The Victoria Hotel was a 43-story, high-class hotel. It had chain branches in all the major cities of the Six Nations. The owner behind it was the Darknet, and it only accepted members of the Darknet. For ordinary people, they would say that the rooms were full. It was a safe house and also a trading hall for people from all walks of life. Violence was not allowed here, and violators would be hunted down endlessly. After getting the certificate, Han Xiao came to Hotel Victoria. The interior was very elegant, with classic wooden furniture and a bar counter. The color was dark brown and had a glossy luster. A peaceful atmosphere floated in every corner. Han Xiao came to the front desk and showed the gold coin of the Blood Pact Society. A waiter brought Han Xiao to the 23rd floor. The 22nd, 23rd, and 24th floors were the areas of the Blood Pact Society. The 23rd floor was the resting hall and trading hall of the assassins. Here, they accepted employment, received remuneration, and so on. There were also many entertainment facilities, such as bars, cafes, and restaurants. After handing the gold coin to the front desk on the 23rd floor, a white-gloved waiter came to receive Han Xiao. The two of them sat in a semi-private booth. The waiter took a black leather notebook and recorded the information of the new member with a fountain pen. Please give me a code name. Han Xiao thought about it and decided to come up with a coquettish name. It might be beneficial for his legend rating. Red Empire Apostle Level Observer in Colton Star Cluster numbered 9527. The waiter did not understand. The list of killers was filled with code names like Silver Fox, Magic Snake, and Ghost. These unconventional, late-stage, Chinibu codenames would definitely make the employer's eyes light up, making people feel excited just by looking at them. But the list was too long. Can you shorten the length a little? The waiter coughed. He had only heard of names that were too short, but he had never heard of names that were too long. Han Xiao thought about it and said black. The waiter was speechless. That was too short. One-word codenames were allowed, but the codenames of this color series had already been taken. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple were basically all dead assassins of the previous generation. The organization would not remove their codenames. Han Xiao smacked his lips. No matter where he was, naming was a troublesome matter. He thought about it and said, Mr. Black then. Mr. Black. Okay, that's normal. The waiter quickly recorded it down. You are now a reserve-level killer with a blank resume. You can only be promoted to Scorpion level after completing a mission. The employer will choose from the list of killers. If someone chooses you, we will contact you, or you can accept public commissions and bounties. Of course, you can also accept private jobs. The union doesn't have any rigid requirements for contract killers, but we will take 5% of the bounty as an intermediary fee. If you have any questions in the future, you can call the front desk of Hotel Victoria to ask. Very reasonable. Han Xiao nodded. He joined the Blood Pact Society for 2 reasons. First, it was for the high bounties accumulated by the Darknet. He knew that each of these bounties could trigger an assassination mission with rich rewards. The second goal was that as long as one was ranked in the top 10 of the Darknet's assassin rankings, one would be able to obtain one regional legendary point. There were only slightly more than 3 months left before the open beta. He wanted to make use of the remaining time to accumulate a large amount of capital. These are all bounty missions. The attendant took out the tablet, opened the bounty page of the Darknet, and handed it to Han Xiao. Han Xiao saw the most popular germinal organization bounty at first glance. The target was him. 0, regardless of life or death. Bounty of 5 million. Coordinates, Star Dragon, West Capital. Haha, good luck. If he returned to the West Capital, he would have had his hands tied. Luckily, he had escaped. Han Xiaoxin laughed secretly. He wondered how long it would take for the germinal organization to realize that they had wasted their efforts. His bounty was the most popular one during this period. The germinal organization was after his life, but his bounty was not the highest. Some of the accumulated bounties were even higher, with some being in the tens of millions. They were almost impossible to complete. For example, there was a bounty to steal the most confidential information of a certain country. According to the strict security of Division 13's underground mainframe, the success rate of this mission was less than 1 in 1,000, and the death rate was as high as 99%. No one would do it. He glanced at the bounties below and took a fancy to a mission. The bounty target was an entire mercenary group called Rose Militant, which was active in the Samar Desert of the Southern Continent. The Southern Continent was where Star Dragon Hesla was located. It was also known as the Southern Continent. It was vast and had a hot climate. Opposite it were the Northern Continent, the Western Continent, and the Andrea Continent, which was located in the middle of the 3 continents. This mission was chosen because it was closer to the Southern Continent. Han Xiao was about to accept when the waiter suddenly paused. He took out another computer and looked at it. "Mr. Black, there's a request for you." Han Xiao was surprised. The information had only been uploaded to the Hitman list for 5 minutes, and there was already a business? Your business is so good. Han Xiao sighed. The waiter was also confused. This is a special case. What is the request? The client wants to talk to you personally. The waiter looked at the computer and said, "He will be here in about 10 minutes. Take a seat first." Han Xiao did not object. After waiting for 10 minutes, a middle-aged man walked over quickly. His hair was white, and he looked prematurely old. However, there was a melancholy expression on his face. He walked into the hall, looked around, and came in front of Han Xiao. "I am Cheng Shanshui," he said in a low voice. Before accepting a mission, one could not reveal the target's real name. They could only ask for basic information. Han Xiao asked, "How much is your reward?" "The enemy's defense force and location?" 12 to 20 bodyguards in Chinfeng City. "The reward is 100,000. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. "Only 100,000? This price was not enough to hire a hitman." Cheng Shanshui nodded nervously. When other hitmen heard about his reward, they immediately rejected it. He was trying his luck to find a new hitman because he did not have enough money. That was why he found Han Xiao. "I accept." Han Xiao nodded. Cheng Shanshui was overjoyed. He took out a stack of documents from his bag, placed it on the table, and slid it in front of Han Xiao. Yu Yuzhu, location in Chinfeng City. Yu Yuzhu was a mafia figure in Hesla. He always had 12 to 16 bodyguards with him. These bodyguards were all retired scouts. Not long ago, he expanded his influence to Chinfeng City. Cheng Shanshui was a local mafia leader in Chinfeng City. He could not resist Yu Yuzhu's invasion, and his influence fell apart. He was alone, so he decided to hire a hitman for revenge. Han Xiao finished reading the documents and signed the contract. A notification popped up on the interface. "You have triggered Level E mission, assassination request, Cheng Shanshui." Han Xiao already knew the mission requirements. He looked directly at the reward. It was not much, only 25,000 experience. "I'm leaving." Han Xiao stood up and turned to leave. Cheng Shanshui hurriedly stopped Han Xiao and asked, "How long will it take you to complete the mission?" Han Xiao paused and turned to look out of the window. It was noon. He said, "You haven't had lunch yet, right?" Cheng Shanshui was stunned. He did not understand what Han Xiao meant. Han Xiao looked back at him and said calmly, "He will be dead by the time you finish eating." Cheng Shanshui's heart skipped a beat. In his impression, when an assassin wanted to assassinate a target, they had to do some preparation, such as gathering information, planning an escape route, and so on. Was this Mr. Black arrogant or strong? The open beta will not be too far away. Just look at the title of this book. P.S. I recommend a good book called The Gaze in the Oasis. Just kidding, the book is called Oasis Lord. It's about writing and hacking, and it's also on the gaming channel. It's very good. As a village robber in Cardia for 3 years, I'm also reading this book. The author, Old Zhao, once wrote a pirate flag PY novel. Oasis Lord will be published at noon today. You guys can go and support it. Chapter 91. Mr. Cheng, we meet again. Cheng Shanshui, who was anxiously waiting for the result, heard someone greet him. He looked up and saw a man standing in front of him. It was a hitman who had rejected a mission. His codename was Larson, and he was an official Scorpion-level hitman. "Ah, it's you. What's the matter?" Larson said calmly. "I'm free recently. I can accept your mission." Cheng Shanshui's eyes lit up, then dimmed. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm sorry, but my mission has been taken by someone else." Once a contract was established, it could not be changed. This was the rule of the Blood Pact Society. Hearing this, Larson was slightly disappointed. He was from Maple. This time, he came to Hesla to visit a friend and travel. He did not want to do any missions. When Cheng Shanshui came to him, Larson saw that the reward was too little and rejected it. However, after a few days of idling, Larson was itching to do some simple missions. He immediately remembered that he had rejected Cheng Shanshui, so he came to look for him. He did not expect that in just one day, someone else would beat him to it. Although Larson was depressed, he knew that he could not break the rules. He had no choice but to walk away and order a drink. After 2 sips, his phone suddenly rang. He looked at the caller ID. It was one of his old clients, Yu Zhu. "Hello, Larson." A man's voice came from the other end of the phone. "It's me. What's the matter, Mr. Yu?" Larson said casually. "I have a mission for you." Larson's eyes lit up. "Tell me about it. I want you to help me get rid of a person." "Oh, I've sent the information to you." This was a private mission, so it would not be confidential. Larson took out his tablet and looked at Cheng Shanshui. That was the target of the mission. "What do you think?" Yu Zhu asked. The sound of a group of people coming down the stairs came from the phone. "I'll take it," Larson said calmly. "Okay, I'll ask someone to transfer the advance payment to bang." Suddenly, the sound of someone falling to the ground could be heard from the other end of the line, followed by the faint sound of a gunshot. Larson's body stiffened. He could tell that it was the sound of a sniper rifle, followed by a group of panicked people shouting. Yu Zhu did not speak again, and Larson immediately understood that Yu Zhu had been killed. He only fired 1 shot and killed more than a dozen bodyguards. What a powerful sniper. Larson's expression froze as he figured out the crux of the matter. Most likely, Cheng Shanshui's request was to assassinate Yu Zhu, and both sides were enemies. Cheng Shanshui is waiting for someone. We'll see who the killer is in a while. Larson's eyes flashed. Through the information provided by Cheng Shanshui, Han Xiao found a tall building a few hundred meters away from Yu Zhu's stronghold and aimed from above. Initially, he wanted to snipe Yu Zhu from the window. But when he saw Yu Zhu walking out of the door, it was more convenient for him to take action. Yu Zhu had more than a dozen bodyguards surrounding him, but to Han Xiao, they were nothing. The shuttle-shaped penetrating bullet that he had just created was extremely powerful against non-metallic targets. The bullet pierced through the body of a bodyguard and accurately hit Yu Zhu's heart. It was a fatal shot. Assassinating an ordinary person was too easy for him. There were no unexpected twists and turns, which made him very disappointed. The commotion here would attract the police. Han Xiao had already used the face simulator to change his appearance and slipped away easily. No one would be able to track him down afterwards. It was simply a godly escape tool. When he returned to the 23rd floor of Hotel Victoria, the restless Cheng Shanshui immediately stood up with a nervous expression. "It's done." Cheng Shanshui relaxed, and looked at his watch subconsciously. From the time Han Xiao left until now, it had only been 45 minutes. Excluding the travel time, the actual killing took less than 10 minutes. Too fast. Pay up. Okay. Cheng Shanshui was in awe. He took out a briefcase with 100,000 yuan and passed it to Han Xiao. Assassination request. Cheng Shanshui. Completed. You have received 25,000 EXP. Cheng Shanshui left with light footsteps as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Han Xiao pressed the bell on the table and called the waiter. He was about to continue accepting the bounty from Rose Militant when he suddenly sensed something. He turned around. Is someone looking at me? Beside the bar counter, a man was sizing him up. Han Xiao did not know who this man was, but it was obvious that he was looking at him with a hint of provocation. Han Xiao squinted his eyes. He had no scruples now, and he did not want to be looked at with hostility. Hence, he gathered his momentum and threw a cold stare at the man, conveying a simple message that could be used anywhere in the world. What are you looking at? Larson's body stiffened. He felt that he was being targeted by a terrifying hostility. A strong sense of danger surged in his heart. He quickly retracted his gaze, and the sense of danger suddenly disappeared. In just a few seconds, cold sweat appeared on Larson's forehead. What a dangerous aura. This guy is not to be messed with. Larson quickly dispelled some of his thoughts. He quickly paid the bill and left. He did not want to stay a moment longer. We meet again. Han Xiao smiled at the waiter. This was the first time the waiter had seen a new member become an official member so quickly. He was shocked and said, "You have officially become a Scorpion-level assassin. You will be able to receive higher treatment. You will be able to receive basic VIP treatment in the Victoria Hotel in other cities." Han Xiao suddenly asked, "What is my ranking on the Darknet assassin list?" The waiter said helplessly, "Only the most powerful assassins can be ranked at the top of the list. Your current ranking is at least in the top 1,000. As he said that, he turned on his PDA and showed the list to Han Xiao. After glancing at it, Han Xiao nodded silently. At this time, the top 10 assassins on the list were around level 40 on average. Their strength was not considered top-notch. Only the top 3 assassins were more terrifying. Their level was close to the upper limit of version 1. 0. The assassin list looked at mission resumes and achievements. For players, they had to complete missions to be ranked on the list. There was also the mercenary list next door. It was the same principle. Blue Star's combat level was not high. During the early days of the open beta, it was difficult for players to meet an expert above level 40. Those level 50 and level 60 experts were the top combat power of Blue Star. They were basically leaders of large forces, hidden secret weapons, reclusive loners, or criminals who committed crimes. Normally, they would not appear in front of the public or players, forming another circle of experts. Only by completing missions or becoming stronger would one have the chance to meet them. These thoughts flashed past his mind. Han Xiao opened the bounty list and pointed at one of the bounties. He said, "I would like to accept the bounty from Rose Militant." "Okay, the commission is being processed. Please wait a moment." The waiter wrote on the paper and tore off the page. He rolled it up and put it into a special metal cylinder. He went behind the counter and inserted the cylinder into a circular metal pipe. The opening of the pipe fit perfectly with the diameter of the cylinder. With a puff, the cylinder was sucked into the pipe. The cylinder traveled through the pipe at high speed. It passed through many junctions and flashed past other cylinders. Not long after, the cylinder reached a new exit. This was a spacious room, and the layout was similar to a customer service telephone reception room. There were rows of tables, and each table had a few computers. The office staff sat in front of the computers to process documents, and there was a cylindrical tube beside the table. An office worker in black pulled out a slip of paper from a cylinder. His fingers tapped on the keyboard, and he quickly entered the contents on the computer. Bounty target, Rose Militant Armed Organization. Requirement, eliminate the target. Initiator, Rothschild family. Location, Samar Desert. Initiator date, November 17th, 685. Bounty amount, 3 million aquamarine dollars. Difficulty level, difficult. Mission record, 685. 11. 27. Alias, Hall, dark, killed 685. 12. 11. Alias, Bloodhand, dark, killed 686. 3. 10. Alias, Demonic Flower, dark, Freeman, dark, killed. Mission update. Rose Militant has 80 to 120 members. There are 4 superhumans. Leader Luo Qing, Esper. Instructor Dorothy, Pugilist. Instructor Ghost Fox, Pugilist. Unknown, suspected to be a mechanic. Active area in Summer Desert. Authorizing approved. Mission record updated. 688. 4. 1. Alias, Mr. Black, Scorpion. Result pending record. At the same time, Han Xiao triggered a new mission. You have triggered the C-rank mission, Bounty Hunter, Rose Militant. Mission tip. There are many forces in the Summer Desert, including wanderer settlements and armed mercenary groups. Why would such a desolate area attract so many forces? Maybe it has something to do with the past. Maybe you should explore it. Mission requirement. Destroy Rose Militant. Time limit. 15 days. Mission reward. 150,000 EXP. Chapter 92. I need to use your military transport aircraft. Han Xiao spoke to Antonio in the Fabian Company's base. Antonio was slightly shocked. We only use the military transport aircraft for large transactions. Even if you're a Black Gold VIP, you still have to pay the corresponding fees. I know. All right. How many people do you want to transport, and when do you leave? Just me. Immediately. Antonio's chubby face trembled. He was speechless for a long time before he finally said, "What a waste." The military transport aircraft would take about a day to reach the destination. The aircraft was equipped with a simple workshop. Han Xiao could also use the machines on the military transport aircraft to gain experience. He did not have to waste time on the journey. Are you sure the fee is 50,000 yuan per trip? Han Xiao took out a stack of cash from his briefcase and threw it on the table. When do you board the plane? In an hour? Fabian Company had rented a long-term takeoff runway at Chunfeng City's airport. A few large dark green transport aircraft were parked at the platform. Han Xiao brought the equipment and materials onto one of the aircraft. Soon, he could feel the structure of the aircraft vibrating. The aircraft began to accelerate and soar into the sky. Once the stratosphere stabilized, he could start to build the machines. The scorching sun shone on the boundless desert. The yellow sand was heated to the point where it was unbearable for the human body. More than 20 people staggered as they trudged through the desert. They were wearing tattered gray robes that had not been washed for a long time. They were emitting a foul smell. Sweat had soaked their clothes and made them stick to their bodies. Their lips were dry and cracked. Their eye sockets were sunken, and their faces were full of fatigue. They were swaying as if they were going to fall at any time. The horses they were leading were also thin and sickly. There used to be an oasis country in the Summer Desert. They lived a prosperous and healthy life. After the war broke out, the country was destroyed. The oasis was destroyed by guns and cannons and assimilated with the surrounding desert. This group of people in ragged clothes was once the people of this country. There was a legend in the Old Kingdom. It was said that in the depths of the Summer Desert, there were relics of another civilization from millions of years ago. They preserved a treasure that could control the desert. During the war decades ago, there was an abnormal change in the Summer Desert. The sand was like an ocean current, forming a huge whirlpool that swept across the desert. It swam continuously, as if it was controlled by someone. After 7 days, it automatically disappeared. The evidence and documents disappeared with the destruction of the oasis country. Some of the survivors of the old country firmly believed in this legend and wanted to obtain this legendary treasure. They pinned their hopes of reviving their country on the legend and have been searching for it for many years. Pilgrims, this was the nickname given by the wanderers near the Summer Desert to the remnants of the old country. These 20 or so people were the last pilgrims. The Felonia ruins the power of magic. It definitely exists. The oldest pilgrim mumbled to himself. In the Summer Desert, a convoy returned to the heavily guarded fortress. "Dorothy, is there still no harvest this time?" Rose Militant's leader, Luo Qing, asked with a cold expression. "This time, the search area is E4, E5, and D4. There is still no trace of Felonia," Dorothy replied in a muffled voice. Dorothy answered in a muffled voice. She was a strong black woman, and a centipede-like scar made her face look horrible. Her arms, which were exposed outside of her tactical vest, were strong and muscular. There were tattoos on them, but they were covered by her skin color. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to see them. No one would know the meaning of the tattoos. Rose Militant was an armed mercenary organization. All of them were women. Their base was located in the depths of the Samar Desert, and they searched for Felonia all year round. Rose Militant had 2 instructors. The other instructor, Ghostly Fox, was a slender white woman. She was an expert assassin. During this search, we exchanged fire with Gatton's people. Winley and Cece are dead. Almost all of the returning female mercenaries were injured. There were many bullet holes in their bulletproof vests, and a ceramic lining inside was shattered. Luo Qing's eyes turned cold. "Be careful in the next search. The Rothschild family, the sponsor of Gatton's group, has been trying to get rid of us." Every armed group in the Samar Desert had their own sponsors. They were stationed in the desert in order to find Felonia. There would be a small battle every 3 days and a big battle every 5 days. The mercenaries who could survive in the desert had at least 10 lives on their hands. They were all ruthless people who lived on the edge of their blades. Han Xiao felt the plane shake, and a strong force pressed him against his seat. After a while, it finally stopped. "We have landed." The pilot's voice came from the broadcast. Han Xiao carried his luggage and walked out of the plane. The hot and humid air hit his face. The landing site was a medium-sized warehouse surrounded by barbed wire. Many armed men were patrolling the area. This was the base of Fabian Group in the Samar Desert. Fabian Group was a global arms company, so they had bases in every region to facilitate logistics. After all, the express delivery companies here did not send weapons. "Welcome to the Samar Desert." Antonio also walked out of the plane. His fat body stretched his white shirt, and the outline of his body could be seen clearly. It was no different from a topless man. "Why did you follow me here?" "Haha, the person in charge of the Samar Desert was involved in a fight some time ago. That unlucky guy's skull was blown off by a stray bullet. So, I came here to arrange some matters. Coincidentally, I haven't been traveling for a while." Han Xiao nodded and did not hesitate. "I need information on the distribution of forces in the Samar Desert and a map of the coordinates. I also need to borrow a desert off-road vehicle. I will get someone to arrange it for you." The Samar Desert was huge. It would take a person 10 days to drive an off-road vehicle across the desert without any rest or deviation. Because of the desert environment, it was difficult to determine one's direction. Thus, only radar could be used as a map. Many armed groups were stationed in the Samar Desert. Han Xiao did not understand why people gathered in this barren land to fight for their lives. To find Felonia. What is that? Han Xiao was curious. He had no impression of this name. It was obviously a hidden mission that no one had triggered in his previous life. Antonio laughed and said, "I don't know either." Han Xiao could see that Antonio was evading the question. He raised his eyebrows and did not say anything. He picked up his equipment and got into the vehicle. He was going to investigate the base of Rose Militant. "I wish you all the best." Antonio waved his hand lazily. The barbed wire gate opened, and Han Xiao drove the off-road vehicle out. With the help of the radar, Han Xiao arrived at the base of the Rose Militant within a few hours. He observed the base through a telescope. The base of Rose Militant was a small fortress with tight security. It had a concrete outer wall and barbed wire. There was only one entrance and exit. There were sentry towers built inside, and there were always lookouts watching the surroundings. The view was excellent, and there was also a high-powered searchlight that would be turned on at night. Han Xiao concluded that it was impossible to sneak in unless one could escape into the sand. Moreover, Rose Militant was a group of women with big breasts and perky buttocks. His buttocks were perky, but he could not squeeze out his breasts. Even with the face simulator, he could not hide it. The infiltration plan was GG. Han Shao looked at the numerous howitzers and dozens of heavy machine guns on the sentry tower. He also looked at the sturdy, concrete outer wall. Well, the direct attack plan was also GG. I can only lure the snake out of its hole. I have to use traps and create something new. Han Shao retreated quietly. He returned to Fabian's base and borrowed Antonio's workshop. He still had 7 potential points. He raised basic electromagnetic theory to level 4 and basic wide area sensing to level 3. He spent a total of 4 potential points. Chapter 93. Fusion successful. You have developed electromagnetic scanning tactical goggles. Oh, Han Shao raised his eyebrows. This was not what he wanted, but it was useful for snipers. It was more accurate than thermal imaging and could scan the interior of a building through walls. If it was used on a scope, it would be very accurate to shoot through walls. One more time. This time, you have used 30,000 experience. Fusion successful. You have developed electromagnetic pulse jammer. This is it. Han Shao nodded. There were many blueprints for this combination, and the electromagnetic pulse jammer was a very common blueprint. The probability of it being dropped was very high. Other than the electromagnetic pulse jammer, there were several blueprints that could meet his requirements. He had originally prepared the experience for the 3rd fusion, but this saved him a lot of experience. Electromagnetic pulse jammer. This thing was famous. It was MMP, no, EMP. There was no shortage of vehicles in the desert. As a sniper, distance was the key. An anti-vehicle jammer was indispensable. Right, he still lacked some high-power bombs, mines, and traps. Touching his chin, Han Zhao's eyes suddenly lit up. He had a new idea. This time, I don't seem to need fusion. I could try to create it myself. In the past, the players had limited use of the self-creation function. However, he could truly understand the knowledge and combine it with the principles of other blueprints to create new blueprints. He could use his own knowledge to supplement the various details of the concept. Through the self-creation function, he could skip the long research and development process. Perhaps he could even research some powerful blueprints in advance. The core principle of high explosive ammunition was a very flammable gas. If this gas was compressed into a larger container, the power would also increase. It would not be inferior to a fragmentation mine. Since he wanted to make explosive mines, he needed to add gunpowder and bullets. Thus, he had to consider the ignition method of the sealed high-explosive gas. Han Shao thought about it and decided to divide the interior of the bomb. The high-explosive gas and inert gas would be neutralized and sealed in one layer. He would leave a mechanism that would be arranged as a delay trigger. When the time was up, it would automatically open. When the gas leaked into the gunpowder, it would directly ignite and explode. However, since he was going to create it himself, Han Shao felt that he might as well add in the power of the finished product and add the principle of the Haim bomb. Let's do it. Han Shao quickly perfected his thought process and began to manufacture it. Self-created machines had to be completed first before the success of the self-created machines could be determined. Since the players had to set up the concept route, put in the materials and parts, choose the tools, and then start the loading bar, the success rate was completely dependent on luck. On the other hand, Han Shao was personally involved in all aspects of the manufacturing process and could make minor adjustments at any stage. The success rate was on a completely different level. Soon, a metal disc-shaped mine with a diameter of about 30 centimeters was created. He opened the interface and activated the self-created judgment. Determining blueprint creation, judgment failed. It actually failed. Han Shao frowned slightly. Failure of judgment must be due to the machine not being able to achieve the desired effect, or there was an obvious flaw. He found a place to test the power of the first product and found that there was a problem with the ignition of the high flammable gas, gunpowder shrapnel, and poison gas. It exploded, but the power was not as expected, so he had to modify it again. It was very difficult to control the gas. Even the slightest mistake had to be redone, and the machinery had to be perfected again and again. The testing ground of the Fabian organization's stronghold, which was used to test the power of the weapons, was charred black and filled with poisonous gas. Even he had no choice but to retreat, or else his health would continue to drop. Finally, after the 13th failure, a heavenly notification sound came from the interface. Judgment successful. You have created your own blueprint. The blueprint of a new type of bomb appeared in his mind, and the interface automatically recorded all the principles behind it. Han Xiao looked at the effect and muttered, "Then let's call it the high flammable poison time delay bomb. It's too boring. Let's call it the poison deflagration bomb." Naming successful. You have received the blueprint poison deflagration bomb. Once the blueprint was recognized by the interface, it became a skill. The level of the blueprint could be increased through experience, and the parameters could be clearly understood. With the reference of the template, the production speed would be much faster. Just as I thought, the function of the self-created blueprint is suitable for my situation. There is a huge potential to be discovered. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. The next step is to create a sufficient number of bombs. It was nighttime. Han Xiao drove to an empty area where he set off a row of fireworks and set them off with a delay. After that, he went to the route that Rose Militant had to take to reach this area. He set up traps, planted jammers, and planted poison deflagration bombs. How could he be sure that this was the only route? Have you ever heard of the shortest line between 2 points? Of course, he did not rule out the possibility that the enemy would take a detour. Even if that happened, he would not lose anything. At most, he would not be able to ambush them. The EMP jammer was a cylindrical device with a base. Han Xiao had created a portable model. It was about 1 meter tall and had a radiation radius of 300 meters. It emitted high-frequency electromagnetic signals that interfered with precision instruments and electronic components. Its targets included communication devices, electronic control devices, and detection radars. It was very effective against vehicles. It could affect the electronic control system of the vehicle, such as sensors and controllers, and cause the vehicle to malfunction. Although Han Xiao did not think that Rose Militant's vehicle was anti-EMP, he adjusted the jammer's power to a very high level for safety reasons. This way, if the vehicle was not covered with anti-EMP metal, it would be hit by the jammer even if there was a small gap. The price was that the jammer's energy consumption was very high. A high-energy battery that cost $2,000 would be depleted in 10 seconds. However, it did not matter much. The jammer did not need to continuously release EMP. As long as the first wave of attack was completed, the effect would be the same. After setting up the trap, he parked the off-road vehicle behind a sand dune, about 400 meters away from the trap. Then, he quietly crouched on the ground and aimed with the Red Falcon like a patient hunter. The temperature of the desert at night dropped drastically. The cold wind blew the sand and dust. Han Xiao wrapped himself in a high-collared windbreaker and thick leather gloves to prevent the cold from affecting his accuracy. Boom! Dozens of fireworks shot into the sky from the preset area. They were extremely eye-catching in the night sky. Even from a dozen kilometers away, they could be seen clearly. Something's happening. In the base of Rose Militant, the lookout saw the fireworks and quickly reported it to Luo Qing. Luo Qing quickly ordered, "Dorothy, bring some men to check it out. Be careful of the other armed groups. If they are attacked, send out a distress signal immediately." Dorothy nodded and selected 20 mercenaries. They quickly put on their tactical suits and filled their pockets with various magazines and grenades. Then, they boarded 4 off-road vehicles and left. In the base of Kutun Mercenary Organization, Kutun also saw the fireworks. He coldly said, "Send someone to check it out. There might be a fight. Bring everyone." Armed off-road vehicles drove out of Kutun's base one after another. The same scene was happening in the other bases of the other forces that could see the fireworks. The off-road vehicles of Rose Militant sped forward. The tires kicked up sand and left a long trail behind them. "Instructor Dorothy, do you think that this is a sign that Felonia is about to appear?" A female mercenary asked. Dorothy looked ferocious. When she pursed her lips, she looked like a black tiger that was about to devour its prey. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. She coldly snorted and said, "Humph, If Felonia was so easy to find, we wouldn't have wasted 2 years here. This time, I think someone is messing with us. Everyone, be on high alert. Maybe it's another trap set by Kutan. Virum. As soon as she finished speaking, a strange electric current sounded in the air. Dorothy's superhuman senses detected a special wave spreading from not far away. At the same time, the dashboards of the vehicles crackled with sparks. The 4 off-road vehicles suddenly lost control and crashed into each other like drunkards. No matter how hard the drivers stepped on the accelerator, they could not move. Enemy attack. Dorothy was shocked. She looked around cautiously. What had paralyzed their vehicles? Could it be an EMP? The mercenaries hurriedly looked around. All they could see was the yellow sand under the night sky. There was nothing unusual. The desert was vast and empty. The starry river could be seen in the night sky. A bleak night breeze blew past. The group of Rose militant mercenaries felt goosebumps on their arms. It was as if a huge hand was choking them. The pressure was suffocating. Bam! One of the Rose militant mercenaries was sent flying by the huge force. She landed on the yellow sand with a loud thud and no longer made a sound. There was a bloody hole in her chest. There's a sniper. Hide behind the car. Dorothy was shocked and angry. She hurriedly asked her teammates to hide behind the car. She then took out a distress flare and shot it into the sky. The white light illuminated the night sky. The mercenaries of Rose Militant were slightly relieved. The base was very close. As long as they could hold on for 15 minutes, reinforcements would arrive. Han Xiao, who was lying on the sand dune, looked up at the distress flare. He clicked his tongue and said, "So this is a cloud-piercing arrow that can summon thousands of soldiers?" The picture is the picture of clothes. He changed to a high-explosive cartridge and shot at the location where the burning poison grenades were buried. The bullet landed and ignited a flame, burning the burning poison grenades that were buried under the sand. Boom! With a loud bang, a sea of fire surged up. The other mines that Han Xiao had buried triggered a chain reaction. They exploded one after another. The flames engulfed 4 vehicles and mixed with a thick poisonous gas. The interface was filled with the continuous damage of poison and burning. The Haim bullet was a type of poisonous gas bullet. It was also known as the Haim bullet of justice. Its principle was applied to the burning poison grenades, which made its power more versatile. Coughing sounds could be heard continuously. Dorothy felt disgusted and frustrated. Her ordinary teammates were even worse. They felt dizzy and vomited. If they continued to stay where they were, they would either be burned to death or poisoned to death. Chapter 94. The mercenaries of Rose Militant staggered toward the direction where the bullets came from. They were all corroded by the poisonous gas and were poisoned. Only Dorothy, who had the physique of a pugilist, managed to hold on and lead the way. Han Xiao did not panic. He switched to the shuttle-shaped bullets and fired one shot after another. The gunshots seemed to have a steady rhythm as he killed the mercenaries of Rose Militant one by one. The bulletproof vests could not withstand the penetrative power of the shuttle-shaped bullets. With his various skills, he could deal more than 130 points of theoretical damage with each shot. These ordinary mercenaries were around level 5 to level 8 and had around 150 HP. One shot was enough to kill them. Coupled with the bleeding, burning, and poisonous gas, there was no need for him to fire a second shot. His killing efficiency was extremely high. He purposely left Dorothy for last so that he could eliminate Dorothy's helpers first and deal with the strongest one alone. After killing the last ordinary mercenary, Dorothy finally reached him. She raised the modified submachine gun in her hand and fired wildly at him. Han Xiao ducked his head, and all the bullets landed on the sand dune, splashing sand everywhere. Dorothy ran and fired at the same time. When she ran out of bullets, she finally reached Han Xiao. A cruel expression appeared on her face. When a pugilist closed in on a sniper, only death awaited him. Dorothy could not wait to smash Han Xiao's skull into pieces, just like she had done dozens of times to others. Tiger hunting axe. Dorothy swung her elbow horizontally like a huge axe. With a whoosh, she rushed toward Han Xiao's head. She felt that this elbow could definitely smash Han Zhao's brains out. The fierce elbow missed, and Han Xiao suddenly slid back 3 meters like a loach. Slide shooting. Han Xiao pulled out the 2 berserk eagles from behind his waist. With the support of overload and continuous shooting, 7 to 8 shuttle-shaped bullets were shot into Dorothy's body in an instant. Dorothy screamed in pain, but her eyes were filled with arrogance. She pulled out a shotgun from her back and shot a shower of bullets at Han Xiao. The shotgun can do the most damage at this distance. No matter who you are, you're dead meat. The thought flashed through Dorothy's mind, but in the next moment, she was shocked by the scene before her eyes. The scale-like armor instantly covered Han Zhao's upper body. Sparks burst out when the shrapnel hit the armor. With his current technology, he could already make a magnetic-controlled armor that covered half of his body, and the surface area was even larger. Are you stupid? I have armor. In the next moment, Han Xiao shot all the bullets in the clip into Dorothy's body. Only Pan Kuang, a martial artist, could barely withstand bullets with his body. Dorothy was far from being able to withstand the power of the large-caliber bullets. Blood spurted out of her mouth as she fell to the ground. She stared at Han Xiao with bloodshot eyes. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something. Bang! Han Xiao directly shattered this black girl's head with a single shot. It was common knowledge that snipers were weak in close combat. Pan Kuang used to think so too, but he died. You have killed Dorothy, LV-25. You have received 7,500 EXP. In the early stages of the game, snipers had long-range, suppressive abilities. It was very convenient for them to kill monsters. However, only the big guilds would nurture them because the cost of a sniper was too high. Even the worst sniper rifle cost tens of thousands of EXP. Every bullet was expensive. Furthermore, normal snipers did not have Han Zhao's magnetic-controlled retractable armor. Once they were in close combat, they would be beaten to a pulp. Han Xiao flipped Dorothy's body and found that the gun Dorothy used had traces of modification. From the way it was used, Rose Militant should have a skill mechanic. After killing this group of enemies, he received more than 10,000 EXP. The flames of the poison deflagration incendiary bullets did not stop for a long time. It would not take long before enemies were attracted. He retracted the EMP jammer. He returned to the car and drove away. Not long after he left, a group of Gatton mercenaries arrived at the scene. They were shocked when they saw the scene. They are from Rose Militant, who ambushed them. Just as the Gatton mercenaries were about to get out of the car to check, Luo Qing arrived at the scene with a small armed team. She saw the tragic deaths of her comrades and the Gatton mercenaries at the scene. Open fire. Both parties had been in conflict for a long time. When enemies met, their eyes burned with hatred. It was impossible to explain. They had to fight first. Luo Qing did not hesitate. She ordered the attack, and the Gatton mercenaries retaliated immediately. An intense battle broke out, and gunshots and explosions resounded in the night sky. Very soon, the other forces were attracted to the scene. When they saw the intense battle between Rose Militant and the Gatton mercenaries, they wanted to be the Oriole and immediately joined in. The scene turned into a chaotic battle. After fighting for a while, a few armed groups that were further away arrived at the scene. Before they knew what was going on, they saw that everyone was fighting. If they did not join in the fun, they would be no different from idlers. They happily joined in. After fighting for half the night, all the groups had suffered losses. They retreated and licked their wounds. The last few forces that arrived had even forgotten why they were fighting and left immediately. Rose Militant brought back 20 corpses. Most of the corpses only had one fatal wound from a sniper bullet. Looks like the one who ambushed Dorothy was not a Gatton. It was a sniper, Ghostly Fox said. Luo Qing's face was gloomy. She was secretly thinking about who could have ambushed them. Rose Militant's enemies were all in the Samar Desert. If there was a battle, it should be a head-on confrontation. This kind of ambush reminded her of 2 years ago, when the Rothschild family had just issued a bounty for them. Many assassins had come alone to deal with Rose Militant. Another assassin who accepted the bounty? Luo Qing frowned. Rose Militant had not been harassed by an assassin for more than a year. After more than a year, would there be another idiot who had forgotten the lesson of the past? Dorothy's death was tragic. She seemed to have been shot at close range. This meant that the sniper this time had a certain level of close-range combat ability. A petite woman wearing an oil-stained coat walked over. She said softly, "I found the tracks where the assassin left. He went southeast. There are 3 forces in that direction. The nearest one is the Farian group's stronghold. Thank you for your hard work, Suli." Suli was a mechanic in Rose Militant. She was in charge of the maintenance and modification of guns, vehicles, and defense facilities. "I found fragments of a landmine explosion at the scene. This was a premeditated trap. The shell of the landmine was made by the Farian group. The assassin might have landed in the Farian group's stronghold. I tried to reconstruct the structure of the landmine. It seems to be a new type of bomb that has never been seen before. The explosion should be related to gas." Luo Qing squinted her eyes. The assassin this time was not easy to deal with, but she was not worried. She dialed an encrypted number to contact the sponsor. "Mr. Sebastian, an assassin is hunting us. We have lost a 20-man team." An old and hoarse voice came from the phone. "I will send someone to deal with it." Every time an assassin appeared, the sponsor would send professionals to deal with the assassin. This was the reason why Rose Militant buried so many assassins in the Samar Desert. Professionals who dealt with assassins were still assassins. P.S. Thank you very much for the bounty. Thank you, brother. Chapter 95. A helicopter landed on the helipad of Rose Militant Stronghold. 3 men walked out of the helicopter. Their faces were cold, and they gave off an aura that kept people away. It was as if they were made from the same mold. E3, E5, and E9 were all assassins trained in the same training camp. "What's the situation?" E3 was the captain, so he went straight to the point. Luo Qing explained the situation to him. E3 squinted his eyes and said, "The enemy is a sniper assassin. The ambush this time was a test. From the way he lured you, he must have gotten hold of detailed information about you. According to your information, he is heading to the stronghold of the Farian group. However, the Farian group is not to be trifled with. We cannot assassinate him there." Luo Qing asked, "What do you plan to do?" "The target of the assassin is you, so he wants to use you as bait. We will send people out as usual. He will definitely make a move. The 3 of us will ambush him and kill him." Luo Qing immediately ordered, "Ghost Fox, you will lead the team out for the next few days." Ghost Fox nodded. In the stronghold of the Farian group. In the room, Han Xiao rubbed the stubble on his chin with his fingers. A cloud of doubt lingered in his heart. The people of Rose Militant seemed to be too weak. Dorothy and the rest performance made him feel strange. If Rose Militant was only at this level, there was no reason that the bounty had not been completed yet. Han Technician's habit of being suspicious was triggered again. He felt that he had missed out on some crucial information, so he went to ask Antonio. After knocking on Antonio's office door, Han Xiao peeked through the gap. Antonio was sitting behind his desk, going through some documents. "Why are you looking for me?" Antonio asked with a smile. Han Xiao sat opposite him and said, "I want to know more about the forces in the Samar Desert. Didn't I already give you the information? You already know their armed forces and the area of influence. I want to know about the things that are not written in the information." Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. "You know, the things behind the scenes." Antonov lit up a cigar and laughed. "Looks like you've realized it. These armed groups are all tools. They all have money behind them to help them search for Felonia. If we can't eliminate the leader once and for all, there will be an endless supply of soldiers. For example, Gatton is backed by the Rothschild family, who is also the one who issued your bounty. Hee, don't be surprised. Rose Militant's bounty is public." Han Xiao was not surprised. He muttered to himself, if this was the case, then to complete the mission, he had to eliminate all the members of the Rose Militant. He could not allow anyone to escape. Most importantly, he had to kill the leader, Luo Qing. Antonio took a puff of his cigarette and said slowly, "The Rose Militant is backed by a political consortium in Ordina. They sponsor parties to manipulate politics and secretly operate mercenary training camps and assassin training camps. Their headquarters are in the Western continent. They don't have much influence in the Southern continent, but they are not something a small organization can compare to. Han Xiao was enlightened. No wonder so many assassins from the Darknet had returned empty-handed. It must be because the Rose Militant had sent reinforcements. What exactly is Felonia? How did it attract the attention of so many organizations? Han Xiao had a feeling that this had something to do with his special reward. Since there was an unknown number of reinforcements, the next step could not be reckless. He had two plans. One was to wait for Rose Militant to take action. Two was to lure the enemy out of the stronghold. Both methods required Rose Militant to leave the stronghold. Rose Militant's reinforcements would have thought of this as well. There was a high possibility that they would let Rose Militant take the initiative to lure him out and then ambush him. What should I do? Maybe I could do the opposite? Han Xiao thought to himself. If he set up a trap at a certain location and then pretended to fall into the ambush and escape, he might be able to successfully reverse the ambush. I'll have to prepare more weapons this way. Ghostly Fox led her team out for the third time. They wandered aimlessly in the desert. She was getting impatient and asked through the communicator, "Why hasn't the assassin appeared yet? Is he afraid?" Assassins are all very cautious. Since the last sneak attack was successful, he will wait for a while to observe your performance, Isan said calmly through the communicator. It was another night. Recently, Han Xiao had realized that he was always up to something at night. He put the newly created items into the car and drove away from the stronghold to set up the traps. The off-road vehicle drove out of the Fabian organization's stronghold. The headlights of the car disappeared into the night. At the same time, it appeared in the lens of a telescope. On a sand dune a kilometer away, Egio was wearing a yellow camouflage cloth. He watched the off-road vehicle with a pair of binoculars. A cold smile appeared on his face. The target left the stronghold in the middle of the night and is heading north. I think he is setting up a trap. He might have noticed our presence and is trying to use reverse psychology to lure us into his trap. Since they knew that Han Xiao was in the Fabian organization's territory, how could they not send someone to monitor his movements? This enemy is too inexperienced. Egio was calm. He felt that this mission would be very simple. Everything was under control. At dawn, Han Xiao returned to the stronghold and looked for Antonio. "You want me to help you drive?" Ananif was surprised. "Yes, I need to shoot, but I don't have hands to drive. So, I'm relying on you." "Wait a minute. What does your mission have to do with me? Why do you want me to help you?" Antonio was puzzled. "It's not easy for us to go on a trip. How can we stay at home? Let's go sightseeing and enjoy the scenery." Antonio pointed at the endless desert outside the barbed wire fence. "Sightseeing? Don't worry about these superficial things. Maybe you can see a mirage somewhere. There will be mountains and rivers. Although the desert is vast, it will work if you are sincere. I don't think we are close." Antonio's mouth twitched. "I'll give you a chance to be friends with me." Han Xiao chuckled. "Has anyone ever told you that you are thick-skinned?" Han Xiao touched his mask. How can 2 layers not be thick?" Although Antonio looked fat, he had a fierce fighting strength. Choosing him as a driver was purely because Antonio would not die so easily. If he chose an ordinary person as the driver and accidentally got shot by a stray bullet, he would die from blood loss. Antonio thought for a while and said, "If you let me participate in the mission, according to the rules, I have to get a share of the money. I'll give you 5%. What do you think?" "Not good. That's too little." Antonio shook his head. "Stop fooling around. You're just driving. Giving you 5% is good enough. If we encounter an enemy, the first one to be hit is the driver. At least give me 20%. Han Xiao stared at him. "Why don't you rob someone?" "Aren't I robbing someone now?" Antonio's small eyes flashed with shrewdness. After arguing for a long time, Han Xiao finally got Antonio to agree to help by paying him 200,000 yuan. Immediate payment was more reliable than an unlimited amount of money. The nature of the mission also changed from a partnership to an employment contract. Hiring a driver at such a price and only using it once was simply too extravagant. Antonio's fat body squeezed into the driver's seat with great difficulty. Han Xiao sat in the back and handed over the coordinate radar and explained the plan in detail. After listening to the plan, Antonio grinned. Interesting. Later, in the morning, the sun was scorching and the desert air was distorted by the high temperature. Ghostly Fox's team only sat in 2 cars. They were wandering in the desert, observing their surroundings. "A car is coming," a mercenary shouted. In the distance, an armored off-road vehicle appeared on the sand dune and moved parallel to Ghostly Fox's team. It was Han Xiao and Antonio. "The enemy is coming." Ghostly Fox's face lit up. Chapter 96. Han Xiao extended the barrel of his sniper rifle out of the window and fired a high-explosive bullet. It accurately hit one of Rose Militant's off-road vehicles. The vehicle was engulfed in flames. However, the desert off-road vehicles were specially designed to withstand high temperatures. The high-explosive bullet's lethality was limited. Han Xiao observed the situation and decisively switched to shuttle-type bullets. He fired at the bulletproof glass of Rose Militant's vehicle, causing snowflake-like cracks to appear. "Surround them." The Ghostly Fox squad immediately turned around, and 2 vehicles surrounded them. Where will the ambush be? Since he knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, Han Xiao was naturally on high alert. Suddenly, he controlled the magnetic armor to cover his face and blocked a sniper bullet that was aimed at his forehead. He looked up and saw a new enemy SUV appear from the side. There was an unfamiliar enemy holding a sniper rifle in the back seat. To be able to fire such a precise shot on a high-speed vehicle, there was a 30% chance that the enemy was also a mechanic, 60% that the enemy was a sniper, and the last 10% chance that the enemy was just a lucky shot. The previous shot was fired by Code 3. Seeing that it did not work, he was slightly shocked. He said in a low voice, "The target has a special defense. I'm not sure if it's a superpower or a machine." Han Xiao guessed that there was more to the ambush. He patted the back of the front seat and said, "Let's go quickly. Don't slow down. Go to the designated location." Antonio skillfully switched gears and stepped on the accelerator. The car drifted and fled in another direction. Suddenly, another off-road vehicle appeared in their direction. It seemed to have been waiting for a long time. This time it was Code 5. He was holding a rocket launcher and fired at them. The rocket rapidly approached them with a trail of flames. Antonio's expression changed slightly. He quickly turned the steering wheel, and the car swerved 90 degrees. The rocket grazed the back of the car and hit the desert. The deafening sound of the explosion filled the air with yellow sand. The shockwave hit the rear of the car. The rear of the car lifted 30 degrees and fell heavily. Han Xiao, who was in the back seat, was jolted. His butt hurt. "TSK, we dodged it." Code 5 was surprised by the driver's quick reaction. He did not stop what he was doing and quickly reloaded. The 4 off-road vehicles occupied 3 directions, forming an encirclement. Antonio could only run in the last direction, but it happened to be the direction where Han Xiao had set up the trap. He has nowhere to run. Number 3 narrowed his eyes. Number 9 is waiting for him in front with the Thorns. Thorns was an armored vehicle modified by Su Li. It had powerful firepower, ample horsepower, and thick armor. It had both the attack and defense of a tank and the speed of an off-road vehicle. Last night, E9 had been monitoring Han Xiao's whereabouts. The 3 killers had set up an ambush with E9 as the final insurance. He had steered Thorns in the direction where Han Xiao had set up the ambush. He had even confirmed the approximate location of the ambush, so there was no way he would fall for it. He had deliberately waited in the direction where Han Xiao was heading, so that when Han Xiao had hope, he would be plunged into despair. "He's already dead," he said quietly. The chase was filled with sparks and explosions. A rain of bullets and rockets chased after Han Xiao's vehicle. Han Xiao fired back repeatedly, barely hindering the pursuit of the 4 off-road vehicles. The firepower of the Scarlet Falcon sniper rifle and the shuttle-type penetrating bullets was quite a threat to the people from Rose Militant. However, his vehicle was currently fleeing in a panic. Coupled with the distractions of Code 3 and Code 5, his accuracy was greatly reduced. Virum, a unique roar of the engine was heard. It sounded like the roar of a tiger. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. He quickly looked ahead. A modified vehicle was blocking his path. Its exterior armor was thick and covered with spikes, making it look like a porcupine. There were several gun barrels on both sides of the vehicle. Judging from the caliber, they should be grenade launchers and mini-missile launchers. There was also a 4-barreled heavy machine gun on top of the vehicle. No, that caliber should be called a heavy machine gun. It was more than enough to be used as an airborne weapon. The thorns. This vehicle was blocking the last direction, forming a tight encirclement with the other 4 vehicles. There was no way to escape. We definitely won't be able to withstand the firepower of that thing. Antonio's expression changed. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. All directions were blocked. It was as if they were in a desperate situation. Drive to the south. Don't worry about the firepower of that vehicle. I'll deal with it, Han Xiao said in a low voice. The enemy in the south was Code 3. He only had 1 sniper rifle, so he was the least threatening. Antonio could only choose to believe in Han Xiao. He quickly turned around and rammed into Code 3. Too late. Code 3's expression was cold. He was about to control the Thorns cannon to blow Han Xiao's off-road vehicle into the sky when he saw Han Xiao turn around and fire a shot at him. The bullet hit the glass and burst into a bright flash. Code 3 was so shocked that his eyes started tearing up. He closed them subconsciously. Dazzling light bullet. Boom, boom, boom. The heavy machine gun on Thorns spewed out thick flames and smoke. The bullet missed its target and hit a dozen meters away from Han Xiao's off-road vehicle. *T. Why did old 9 miss? Code 3 was shocked. He hurriedly asked the driver to stop Han Xiao's vehicle. Antonio was not afraid at all. He stepped on the accelerator and rammed into the side of Code 3's off-road vehicle. Both vehicles shook. In the end, it was Antonio who chose the right angle to crash into the vehicle that opened a path for them to escape the encirclement. Chase. Code 3 was a little annoyed that all his efforts were in vain at the crucial moment. However, he calmed down after looking at the situation. It did not matter. They still had the upper hand. Han Xiao had deviated from the direction of the trap and was panicking. With the power and firepower of Thorns, it was only a matter of time before they caught up with him and destroyed his vehicle. Han Xiao looked behind him through the window. The fleet of Rose Militant was chasing closely behind them. They were less than 200 meters away, and both parties were traveling at more than 160 kilometers per hour. Thorns was still firing nonstop, and the rear of the vehicle that was chasing after him was blasted into a cloud of dust. The effect of the light flash bomb on Code 3 had not subsided yet. His eyes were sore and swollen, and his vision was blurry. He could not see clearly at all. Han Xiao lowered his head and looked at the coordinate radar. He did not panic at all. He said in a deep voice, "Antonio, activate the nitrogen acceleration in 48 seconds. 47, 30, 16, 3, 2, 1. When the time was up, Antonio immediately opened the small cover beside the gear, revealing the nitrogen acceleration button. He pressed it hard. Blue flame spewed out of the off-road vehicle's exhaust pipe. The vehicle's speed instantly increased, and the distance between them increased rapidly. The 2 people in the vehicle were pressed against the back of their seats and could not move at all. A futile struggle. Code 3 did not care. The nitrogen acceleration would end sooner or later. It was just a temporary lifespan. Thorns would catch up with them sooner or later, and they would be blasted into the sky with a wave of firepower. Soon, the distance between them increased to 400 meters. The effect of the nitrogen acceleration disappeared. They're slowing down. Code 5 reloaded a new rocket. He stood up from the sunroof and aimed from afar. At this moment, his vehicle braked suddenly. The sudden momentum caused Code 5 to fall into the back seat. What the hell? Code 5 roared. He saw that the driver was sweating profusely, but the vehicle did not respond. His heart sank. He turned around and looked out of the window. All the off-road vehicles of Rose Militant had stopped. Thorns was the same. All of them had lost their power. All the vehicles are paralyzed. What happened? The members of Rose Militant were shocked. Their vehicles had stopped working, and they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered in the desert. Han Zhao's off-road vehicle stopped at a distance. Ghostly Fox wanted to call for help from the base, but she realized that her communicator had stopped working. She shouted, "This is the effect of the EMP. Impossible. This is not the direction where he set the trap." Code 5 was shocked. Ghostly Fox's heart turned cold when she thought about Dorothy's death. Run. The next moment, a high-explosive sniper bullet was fired from afar. The target was a patch of sand under Code 3's feet. The landmines buried in the ground were detonated. This time, it was not only the poison deflagration mine, but also the real explosive mine taken from Fabian's warehouse. The deafening sound of the explosion was incessant, and the dazzling flames soared into the sky, leaving behind an orange-red glow on Han Zhao's retina. The 100-meter radius around the Rose Militant was completely filled with flames and explosions, and no one could be seen. Chapter 97. Antonio got out of the car and watched the explosion with Han Zhao. He lit up a cigar and laughed. "I haven't seen such a beautiful scene in a long time. I've been sitting in the office for so long that I've almost forgotten what an explosion looks like." "Then you can enjoy it." Han Zhao stretched his neck to relieve the fatigue from the chase. The fire finally died down. He and Antonio approached the explosion site. A strong, suffocating stench filled the air, mixed with the smell of burnt human bodies and poisonous gas. "Oh my, I forgot about the poisonous gas." Han Zhao looked at the notification on the interface. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only retreat and wait for the poisonous gas to dissipate before cleaning up the battlefield. Ugh! A weak moan sounded. The still-alive Code 3 slowly crawled out. His limbs were blown apart, and his body was a mixture of red and black. He struggled to raise his head and stare at Han Zhao. Han Zhao glanced at him. Without waiting for Code 3 to finish, he took out Berserk Eagle and blew his head off. The good guys were invincible in talking, and the bad guys died because they talked too much. There were more examples in the stars in the sky. To be honest, there was a moment when the great mechanic Han wanted to try and kill himself, but after thinking about it, he felt that he did not look like a good main character, so he directly attacked. "This wave of EXP is quite good." 359, what kind of stupid name is that? Han Zhao looked at the interface with disdain. Wait a minute, there seemed to be an enemy missing from the kill information. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He looked around and suddenly fired at the ground 20 meters away. Bang! A black shadow jumped out from the sand. Ghostly Fox held a dagger and moved like a ghost. She stabbed the dagger at Antonio, who was closest to her. The martial arts school that she practiced had a simple earth-burrowing technique. At the moment of the explosion, she hid in the sand and escaped. She originally wanted to hide, but seeing that Han Zhao had seen through her, she could only fight with her life. The dagger reflected the sunlight and flashed with a piercing cold light. Antonio narrowed his eyes and reached out with his thick arm. His large hand was like a bear's paw. Ghostly Fox dodged to the side. Her petite body made it easy for her. She circled behind Antonio and stabbed her dagger at his back. Suddenly, a black shadow enlarged in front of her eyes. A bear-like palm followed her like a shadow and grabbed her head, almost wrapping it around her head. Antonio threw the Ghostly Fox more than 10 meters away, as if he was throwing a shot put. The huge force blasted a circle of ripples in the sand. Ghostly Fox's head was bleeding from a fall. She gritted her teeth as her petite body once again pounced forward. With Han Zhao by her side, she would only be killed if she tried to escape. She had no other choice. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Antonio was about to make a move, Han Zhao fired 2 guns at the same time, turning Ghost Fox into a sieve. "You have killed Ghost Fox, LV-29. You have received 9,400 EXP. Its level isn't low. Why is it so fragile?" Han Zhao looked at her battle log and discovered that Ghostly Fox's main class was only level 8. The rest of her subclasses were all at the level of her subclasses. Moreover, her subclasses were all low level. It was no wonder that she was so weak. Antonio said helplessly, "Give me a chance to move my rusty body. The corpse is still warm. Go and move around." Han Xiao picked his nose. "You're so dirty." When the poisonous gas dispersed, Han Xiao stepped into the explosion zone and retrieved the EMP jammer buried in the ground. Han Xiao did not know that Egeo had grasped his movements, but he was used to making multiple plans. That night, he had not only set up one trap, but also a total of 4 traps in different directions. Unless the enemy did not chase after him, he could lure at least one of them into the trap. "As long as you dare to chase after me, I'll kill you." After putting away the jammer, Han Xiao rummaged through the corpse and found a lot of guns and ammunition. These could all be sold for money. The biggest gain was the modified tank, Thorns. It could be used after the internal electronic components were repaired. "Now I can borrow some strength." Ghostly Fox has lost contact. 3 assassins in ambush, and they had the advantage of intelligence, but they still fell into the enemy's trap. Luo Qing's heart was heavy. The previous 2 teams had failed, and the modified Thorns was gone. Now, the stronghold was defenseless. It was a huge loss. Once again, Luo Qing contacted his backer and explained the situation in detail. The person on the other end of the phone said slowly, "You guys retreat first." "Understood." After hanging up, Luo Qing organized his men to move the valuable resources to the vehicles and prepared to abandon the stronghold and retreat temporarily. This was not the first time Rose Militant faced danger. As long as they escaped for a few days, their backer would send more men over. By then, they would be able to regain their foothold. However, halfway through the transportation of the resources, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the stronghold. Enemy attack. The mercenaries on the lookout post let out shrill cries. Luo was startled and quickly ran to the lookout post. Looking into the distance, he saw a rolling sand dragon rapidly approaching, accompanied by dozens of Gatonian mercenaries' war chariots. "Damn it, they're too fast." Rose Militant's forces were greatly damaged, and they would definitely be targeted by other forces. Gatton was the most likely enemy to take advantage of this situation. Leaving the stronghold was to avoid the hostility of other forces. However, the Gatton mercenaries were too fast. It could only be because someone had tipped them off. Luo Qing was furious. The Gatton mercenaries were attacking the stronghold from the front. If they drove away recklessly, it would turn into a chase, which would be even more dangerous. It was impossible to stop halfway. "Leader, what should we do?" Luo Qing made up his mind. "Retaliate. Beat them up." The mercenaries of Rose Militant put down the resources in their hands and hurriedly returned to their respective fortifications. They controlled their machine guns and howitzers and fired at the Gatton mercenaries. The Gatton mercenaries did not back down and retaliated. Bullets flew back and forth, forming a deadly barrage. Countless shell casings fell onto the yellow sand, and many charred craters appeared on the sand like craters on the surface of the moon. Rose Militant's stronghold was well fortified. Even though they lacked manpower, they were able to withstand Gatton's attack. Behind the walls of the stronghold, Luo Qing was continuously commanding the mercenaries. Suli walked over and whispered into his ear, "We're understaffed. 1/4 of the fortifications are unmanned. We're trapped in the stronghold. If other forces interfere, we'll be in a bad situation." As soon as she finished speaking, a loud engine sound came from afar. Luo Qing and Su Li's hearts skipped a beat. They recognized this engine sound. On the other side of the battlefield, Han Xiao was driving the ferocious-looking Thorns. He leaped down from the sand dune like a ferocious tiger. The car drew an arc in the air. The repaired exterior armor reflected the dazzling sunlight, and the idling wheels spun at an extremely high speed. The car crashed on the ground, kicking up a cloud of yellow sand. The car sped up and charged toward the stronghold of Rose Militant with an imposing aura. "Isn't that the Thorns of Rose Militant?" Gatton narrowed his eyes and quickly ordered his subordinates to shrink their formation. He had a deep understanding of the firepower of Thorns. He thought that the pilot of Thorns was an enemy, so he was prepared to defend against thorns from the flank. However, the people of Rose Militant were even more nervous than him. They knew the firepower of the thorns better. Suli shouted, "Stop him quickly! Don't let the thorns get close to the stronghold." Luo Qing felt extremely wronged. The thorns was their trump card in the past. Now it was seized by someone else and used against them. What kind of behavior was this? It was like when someone stole your girlfriend and the bastard even brought your girlfriend or ex-girlfriend to show off in front of you. How could you tolerate this? Chapter 98. The machine guns and howitzers in the stronghold immediately aimed at the approaching thorns. Seeing this, Gatton knew that Thorns was a friend and not a foe. He yelled, "The convoy at the side, make way for that uninvited guest." Gatton's convoy changed their formation and revealed a path to the main entrance of Rose Militant Stronghold. This would make it easier for Thorns to rush in. Han Xiao was the only one on Thorns. A few hours ago, he had killed the ghostly Fox Squad and repaired Thorns after returning to Fabian's stronghold. This time, he was going alone. The other forces in the Samar Desert would not let go of this opportunity when Rose Militant's forces were weak. He was the one who sent the message to Gatton so that he could take advantage of the situation. The howitzers, machine guns, and small missile launchers on Thorns were controlled by the aiming device on the dashboard. They had to be manually aimed, which meant that there was no fire control system installed. Many missiles were fired at them, and they dodged those that they could. If they could not, they would use the external armor to block them. Han Xiao aimed at a cannon on the wall of the stronghold and fired. The car shook violently as several small missiles and grenades smashed into the wall of the stronghold, bursting into dazzling flames. The cannon was blown into countless pieces and spiraled into the sky. In the stronghold, Luo Qing's face was pale. She had a feeling that the stronghold would be hard to defend. She called Su Li and whispered, "Take 5 people with you. We will retreat through the secret passage and give up on the stronghold." Su Li nodded and did not object. The mercenaries left behind in the stronghold were abandoned. They did not say anything and quietly retreated through the secret passage. As long as they survived, they could have as many mercenaries as they wanted. Their backer would send them more manpower. The mercenaries who were defending against the enemy did not know that they had been abandoned. They conscientiously controlled the cannon to block Gatton's convoy and Thorns. The sound of cannons filled their ears, and smoke and flames filled their vision. They could not hear their comrades' shouts at all. Everyone was like a reef under the waves, fighting alone. Boom! Dozens of grenades and rocket launchers were fired at the same time. The battered metal door, finally, could not bear the burden and was blown away. The door was wide open. "Charge in!" Gatton was overjoyed. The convoy entered one after another, and the Gatton mercenaries swept through the interior of the stronghold with their assault rifles. The mercenaries of Rose Militant were unable to launch an effective counterattack. Whenever they tried to leave the turrets, they would be shot full of holes. Han Xiao drove Thorns in and took out his berserk eagle. Gatton's men glanced at him but did not stop him. Han Xiao moved swiftly. His black windbreaker fluttered like a cape as he moved. He was like a black ghost wandering around the battlefield. He quickly walked around the base of Rose Militant. 2 of the Rose Militant's mercenaries were shot in the head by Han Xiao. One of them was quite pretty. If she wore a bikini, she would be a beautiful sight on the beach. Han Xiao regretted his decision. If he had known this would happen, he would not have shot her. After looking around, Han Xiao did not see the leader of the Rose Militant. He frowned as he realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. There should be a secret passage. Battles broke out every day in the Samar Desert. It was not surprising that the Rose Militant had left a secret passage for themselves. Han Xiao soon found something unusual. Luo and her men had left in a hurry and left behind footprints. He followed the footprints and found a cellar hidden under the floor. It was dark inside, and there was a damp smell of water. An underground river. Han Xiao threw a torch into the cellar. It was about 5 meters deep. After confirming that there was no danger, he jumped in. The underground of the Rose Militant stronghold was a huge rock mountain. Under the cellar was a tunnel that had been dug out. It looked like a mine tunnel in a mine. Wooden frames supported the rock walls. It was dark in front of him, and there was no light source. There were clear footprints on the sand that led to the front. Han Xiao reached out and touched the rock wall. It was moist and cold. There might be an underground river nearby. The situation in front of him was not clear. He thought for a while and took out the spider detector that he always carried with him. He placed it on the ground and activated it through his tablet. The little mechanical spider stood upright like a soldier waiting for orders. "I'll call you Spider Number 1. After giving it a cool name, as usual, Han Xiao controlled Spider Number 1 to enter the tunnel. The images captured by the camera were displayed on the tablet. Spider Number 1's camera had a night vision function. After walking for a while, Spider Number 1 suddenly bumped into the rock wall and reached the end of the tunnel. After confirming that there was no danger in the tunnel, Han Xiao took out his flashlight and walked to the end of the tunnel. As expected, there was a secret door above his head. He opened it and a cloud of sand fell down. Han Xiao peeked out and saw a slanted cave outside the cellar. Sunlight shone in through the opening of the cave, and there were wool tracks on the ground. 3 steps turned into 2 steps as he walked out of the cave. His eyes suddenly opened up. This was a weathered rock formation. Looking into the distance, he could see the outline of the stronghold in the distance. 2 tracks left behind in the desert from another direction. The remaining members of the Rose Militant have escaped. I have to catch up with them. With that thought in mind, Han Xiao put away Spider Number 1 and returned to the stronghold through the tunnel. He was ready to chase after them with thorns. In the stronghold, Gatton had wiped out all the mercenaries from the Rose Militant. He was disassembling all the resources and taking them away. When he saw Han Xiao, they slowed down and focused their attention on him. Han Xiao's heart sank. Gatton led a group of mercenaries to surround Thorns. Han Xiao quietly touched his gun and walked over. He said in a low voice, "Excuse me, who are you?" Gatton looked at Han Xiao from head to toe. He seemed to be deep in thought. "That's not important. Please move away from my car." "Your car?" Gatton glanced at Thorns and revealed a playful smile. He gave a signal with his eyes, and the surrounding mercenaries slowly surrounded them. They looked like they were ready to draw their guns at any moment. Gatton chuckled. He stared at Han Xiao and asked again, "Is this your car?" The threat was obvious in his words. It was as if he would beat Han Xiao up if he did not know what was good for him. Swoosh! Han Xiao did not say anything. He slid 3 meters forward in an instant. Like an unsheathed sword, he pointed at Gatton's forehead. He was as fast as a swallow and as black as lightning. So fast, the surrounding mercenaries were shocked. They quickly raised their guns and aimed at Han Xiao. Han Xiao's burst of speed made them very nervous. Furthermore, their boss was pointed at by a gun, so they did not dare to shoot. The situation was in a stalemate. Gatton did not panic or fear when a gun was pointed at his forehead. He was a ruthless person who lived on the edge of his blade. He sneered, "If you want to threaten me to make my men put down their guns, you can save your energy." Han Xiao ignored the guns around him and said calmly, "You've already guessed my identity. The boss behind you wouldn't want the Dragon King Temple to be washed away by the flood." Gatton's expression changed slightly. He frowned and pondered for almost a minute. As the atmosphere became more and more tense, he suddenly waved his hand and ordered his men to put down their guns. He forced a smile and said, "Looks like this is really your car." Han Xiao raised the Mad Eagle, unmoved. Seeing this, Gatton leaned to the side and opened up a path for him. Han Xiao finally moved. He brushed past Gatton and got into Thorns. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Not a bad try." He stepped on the accelerator and sped away. Gatton watched the car disappear into the distance and stopped smiling. He turned around and saw his men staring at him. He said unhappily, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and move the things." Although he was envious of Thorns, he was not willing to take the risk of angering the boss behind him. Gatton guessed that Han Xiao was an assassin who accepted the bounty, so he could be considered half of his own people. Since Han Xiao had pointed it out, he could not do anything. If he ruined the boss's plans, he would end up badly. Chapter 99. Han Xiao followed the tracks, and all he could see was a boundless desert. The tracks left behind by Luo Qing and the rest were as obvious as the folds on a piece of white paper. The radar showed their current location so that he would not get lost. They were currently heading towards the outer edge of the Samar Desert. The weather calendar showed that a sandstorm had occurred in this area not long ago. The monotonous desert scenery made Han Xiao feel tired. After chasing for more than half an hour, an off-road vehicle suddenly appeared in the distance. He was instantly energized. I finally caught up. The Rose militant members in the off-road vehicle also noticed Han Xiao. "It's Thorns!" Suli exclaimed. Luo Qing's face tensed up. He quickly looked around and realized that there was only one vehicle chasing after them. He was instantly enraged. "You dare to chase after us alone? Do you think we are easy targets?" "Turn around, boom, boom." Thorns fired at full power, and the grenades and missiles chased after Luo Qing. Luo Qing retracted his head and said awkwardly, "Ahem, let's run for a while and wait for them to finish firing." Sparks flew all the way as the two cars chased each other across the sand dunes. The worn-out pilgrims trudged across the sand dunes with difficulty. The leading old pilgrim was panting heavily, and his clothes were drenched in sweat. He untied his water bottle from the back of his horse and gulped down a mouthful of water. However, he could not quench his thirst and fatigue. The old pilgrim turned around and looked at the group. Everyone looked listless, and the remaining few were the last of the pilgrims. The old pilgrim recalled the time when he was young. Tens of thousands of his compatriots had embarked on this journey. After years of hardship, only 20 of them were left. Some had died, and some had given up. Sometimes, the old pilgrim could not help but doubt the existence of Felonia. However, if he gave up, he would be denying his many years of perseverance. The sound of engines could be heard from afar. Han Xiao and the Rose militants' vehicles appeared in their field of vision. The pilgrims were not surprised. When they saw that the two vehicles had no intention of crashing into them, they were relieved. They stood still and waited for the two vehicles to leave. At this time, a small missile missed again and hit a patch of sand. At this time, a sudden change occurred. The ground suddenly shook. At the place where the missile exploded, the desert caved in, and the quicksand slid down, revealing a black hole. The hole kept expanding like the mouth of the earth. The appearance of the quicksand proved that there was a huge hole under the desert. "What is that?" The pilgrim looked in the direction of the cave, his mouth wide open. "You have discovered the hidden location, Felonia 08. You have gained 1,000 exploration EXP. Bounty Hunter, Rose Militant, hidden requirement met." "Huh?" Han Xiao almost slipped and overturned the car. What the hell? How could he be so unlucky? How can I waste my luck in such a place? How can I fix this? The quicksand cave was still expanding. He recalled that a sandstorm had passed by here a few days ago. Perhaps it was because of the change in the sand layer that his cannon had caused a chain reaction. Although he was curious about what Felonia was, it was more important for him to kill Rose Militant. He left a mark on the coordinate radar and continued to chase. The two vehicles sped away quickly. The old pilgrim's hands were trembling. He was excited and called out to his companions behind him. That must be Felonia. Let's go there quickly." The pilgrims were excited. They could not wait and walked towards the cave that was gradually stabilizing. Felonia's treasure. Felonia's treasure. The old pilgrim mumbled to himself as tears streamed down his cheeks. He felt that his years of persistence were finally paying off. After chasing for a few more kilometers, Thorns ran out of ammunition. No matter how fierce the firepower was, it was bound to run out eventually. However, Han Xiao let out a long sigh of relief. This chase was finally coming to an end. Those ladies in front should stop now. If they don't stop, they will be too cowardly. That guy's finally done shooting. Suli was the creator of Thorns. She immediately noticed that something was wrong with Thorns. Luo Qing heaved a sigh of relief and shouted, "Turn around." The two vehicles were about 400 meters apart. Han Xiao had already stopped his vehicle. When he saw Rose Militant's off-road vehicle turn around, he smiled and kept shooting with his sniper rifle. 400 meters was enough for him to shoot 8 to 10 shots. For bullets pierced through the bulletproof glass. The fifth bullet was aimed at the driver. Luo Qing, who was in the passenger seat, raised her hand and blocked the front of the driver. The bullet seemed to have hit an invisible barrier. A ripple of white light appeared in the air. The bullet was flattened by the recoil and turned into a metal cake that floated in the air. A force field mutant. Han Xiao squinted his eyes. He felt that this was a tricky situation. Although there were many strange mutants, some people could awaken similar mutants. The force field mutant was a big branch of mutants. Force field, elemental control, physique enhancement, and transformation were all common mutants. The force field mutant was able to control objects from a distance. They could form barriers out of thin air and condense invisible collisions. It was a natural counter to gunners. With that in mind, Han Xiao immediately stuffed a Haim bullet into his mouth and fired again. Luo Qing blocked the bullet with her force field like before. The bullet was flattened and released a light green poisonous gas. Everyone in the vehicle was poisoned. They felt dizzy, their chests were tight, and their HP dropped continuously. Han Xiao knew from the battle information that Luo Qing was also at level 30 like him. Her force field mutant had not reached the stage where she could control gases. The next bullet was a high explosive one. It set the interior of the vehicle ablaze. However, it was quickly extinguished by the fire extinguisher. This was a vehicle used for escape. There was a fire extinguisher in the vehicle to prevent accidents. Han Zhao's plan to force the enemy to abandon the vehicle had failed. However, he was not discouraged. He fired another 2 Haim bullets. The Rose militants' off-road vehicle was surrounded by a thick green, poisonous gas. It looked like a plague tank. After a few shots, the enemy was only 100 meters away from him. Han Xiao put away his gun, stepped on the accelerator, and rammed into the off-road vehicle. Su Li's expression changed slightly. She quickly said, "Get out of the way. Thorn's armor is too thick. We can't ram through it." The driver heard her and quickly turned the steering wheel. He wanted to brush past Thorns. Han Xiao saw this and turned in the same direction. Unfortunately, he was one step too late. He only brushed past the rear of the off-road vehicle. He wanted to wreck the enemy's off-road vehicle so that he could use Thorns to kite the enemy. However, the Rose militant reacted in time and dodged his attack. Luo Qing realized that even though Thorns had run out of ammunition, it was not a toothless tiger. She suppressed her anger and said, "Forget it. Let's not waste time with him." The off-road vehicle turned around and ran for a few meters. Luo Qing realized that Thorns did not chase after them. She thought that Han Xiao had given up. She heaved a sigh of relief. She gritted her teeth and said, "I'll let you go this time. When the reinforcements arrive, it will be your time to die." Just as she finished her thought, an invisible wave spread out from Thorns. The off-road vehicle suddenly lost its power and slid a few meters. It was paralyzed on the spot, and the people in the vehicle fell onto the ground. In the back seat of Thorns, Han Xiao activated the electromagnetic pulse interference device. Thorns lost its power as a result. Han Xiao sighed. This was the last resort to prevent the enemy from escaping. He did not want to use it, but seeing that Luo Qing did not have the guts to stay and beat him up, he could only watch helplessly. Even if Thorns could be repaired, it would take at least 10 minutes. Then, it would be a battle between humans. Electromagnetic pulse. The vehicle broke down. Luo Qing's mind buzzed. She had been tricked time and time again. She could no longer suppress her anger. She got out of the vehicle and charged forward. The force field erupted from her feet. Every step she took allowed her to cross a few meters. She was like a cannonball as she dashed toward Han Xiao. The force field around her flickered. "Do you want to die so badly?" Chapter 100. Han Xiao turned around and ran, turning back to shoot at Luo Qing with Haim bullets, kiting him. Luo raised her hands and pushed them forward as she ran, releasing a stable force field in front of her to block the bullets. Every time she was hit, a circle of white light would burst out. The force field was a natural counter to gunners, but the poisonous gas of the Haim bullets made Luo Qing's HP drop slowly. Moreover, a small part of the impact of the force field was transmitted to Luo Qing. Although it was reduced by more than 95%, it was still a damage. Luo Qing's anger rose, and her murderous aura was so dense that it almost liquefied. Speaking of which, if her murderous aura really liquefied, she would probably look like a fountain right now. After Han Xiao fired the 13th bullet, Luo Qing closed in on him, and this kiting took away more than 100 HP from her. If the Esper did not specialize in defense, they were basically fragile. Luo Qing's force field was both offensive and defensive, but if she faced Han Xiao head-on, who was protected by the magnetically controlled retractable armor, she would be knocked around in minutes. Luo Qing noticed this as soon as they started fighting. Han Xiao suddenly pulled out his retractable katana. With the katana in his right hand and the mechanical arm in his left, he fearlessly clashed with her. Luo Qing immediately condensed her force field and smashed it on Han Xiao's head. However, she found that a thin metal armor appeared on his body and turned into a helmet in the blink of an eye. Han Xiao only tilted his head back slightly and blocked the impact of the force field. With the katana in his right hand and the fist in his left, he tore apart Luo Qing's force field. The two fought fiercely, and the force field was constantly emitting white light waves. Even Pan Kuang, who was close to level 40, was defeated in close combat, so it was impossible for Luo Qing to deal much damage to him. However, the force field ability was more troublesome. It could attack from any angle without warning, interrupting Han Xiao's attacks many times. Force field throw. Han Xiao suddenly felt an invisible force hit his knee. Luo Qing took the opportunity to open up a distance. Her breasts were undulating, and her lungs were burning. The high-intensity battle had drained her stamina. Espers consumed a lot of stamina, and she had squeezed out stamina many times to replenish her energy. She was exhausted and looked at Han Xiao in shock. This sniper was 2F** good at fighting. He was even more difficult to deal with than a pugilist. Tut tut tut. The remaining mercenaries of Rose Militant had finally closed in on him. The first thing they did was to focus their fire on Han Xiao, but he managed to evade their attacks with slide-step consecutive shots. Han Xiao activated Overload, and with a series of continuous attacks from his Berserk Eagle, the mercenaries fell to the ground with blood spurting out of their mouths. Only Su Li managed to dodge the attack. His movements were vigorous, and he had the free and easy demeanor of a martial artist. He wore a pair of specially made black gloves. On the gloves were patterns that looked like an electronic motherboard. They were currently shining with a dazzling blue light. Han Xiao's sharp senses felt a trace of danger. Mechanical pugilist. Su Li quickly closed in on him and pressed her hand forward. Her movements were light and weak. Han Xiao's eyes suddenly narrowed as he recognized the origin of the gloves. Su Li's threat level increased tremendously in his heart. He quickly turned around and dodged. He did not dare to face her head-on. He focused his two guns on Su Li, wanting to get rid of her first. However, Luo Qing immediately closed in on him and blocked the bullets with her force field. The three of them fought endlessly in the desert. Su Li's gloves made Han Xiao's movements somewhat restricted. The two women quickly discovered this point and used it to their advantage, quickly gaining the upper hand. The situation gradually developed in a direction that was disadvantageous to Han Xiao. If I don't pay a price, it will be difficult to get rid of these two. Han Xiao's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly closed in on Su Li. He had always been fearful of Su Li's gloves. This sudden collision stunned Su Li for a moment. Her gloves subconsciously pressed on the magnetically controlled, retractable armor on Han Xiao's chest. The electric current and the high temperature suddenly exploded. The durability of the retractable armor dropped by almost 100 points in an instant. This was the first time the magnetically controlled retractable armor had lost so much durability in one hit. Han Xiao's chest was burning. The temperature had exceeded the heat resistance of the magnetically controlled retractable armor and hurt his body. He did not have time to look at the interface. Taking advantage of the short moment when he was close enough, he stabbed Su Li's chest with the wind cutter blade. Facing Su Li's shocked eyes, the berserk eagle fired crazily at her forehead. Mechanics without armor were very fragile. All the bullets in the berserk eagle's magazine were shot out. Bang, bang, bang. I'm going to lift your skull. Kill one first. Luo Qing roared and took the opportunity to hit Han Zhao's back. A sharp pain came from his spine as if it was about to be broken. Han Zhao endured the pain and slid forward. He turned around and emptied the bullets of the berserk eagle. He focused on Luo Qing's legs. Luo Qing's energy was almost depleted after the battle just now. She was like an arrow at the end of its flight. After the sneak attack, she did not have enough energy to keep up with the attack. The bullets broke through her force field and pierced through her knee. Luo Qing's expression changed drastically. She knew very well how fatal it would be to lose one's mobility when facing a sniper. In a hurry, she wanted to end the battle in one go. She gathered all her force field and wanted to injure Han Zhao's legs. However, the moment Han Zhao succeeded, he pulled away. The force field exploded where he was originally standing, creating a huge crater. Luo Qing's heart sank. Her legs were injured, and she was now a target. Han Zhao was sniping from afar, and she could only passively block. Her energy would eventually run out. Despair appeared in her heart. It's over. Bang, bang, bang. From afar, Han Zhao shot steadily with his sniper rifle, wearing down Luo Qing's energy one shot at a time. Under her unwilling and angry eyes, Han Zhao shot her in the head. You have killed Luo Qing, LV-30. You have received 12,000 EXP. You have received thermoelectric cutting gloves, X2. The theory behind this pair of gloves was based on basic thermodynamics, which he had not learned yet. There was a miniature thermoelectric converter inside, and the energy source was a high-energy battery. It consumed a lot of energy, but it was very powerful. It also dealt bonus damage to metals. The spoils of war were naturally taken by Han Zhao. Speaking of which, this seemed to be the first time that his equipment had been dropped by a mechanic-class enemy. Mechanical pugilists used one or a few types of melee machines as the core of their battle, and they developed special skills around the weapons. Su Li's combat style was relatively low-level mechanical pugilists, and she only relied on the power of her equipment. Some mechanical pugilists' equipment had their own skills, and they could only be used when certain conditions were met. Among the 4 blueprints that Old Man Lu had given him, one of them was a piece of equipment with its own skills. The mission had been completed, and all that was left was to go back and hand in the reward. Han Zhao thought about Felonia and decided to go back and take a look. He turned off the EMP interference device and checked the precise parts of thorns that had been burned. He calculated that it would take about 15 minutes to fix the car, so he immediately got to work. There seems to be a group of wanderers near Felonia. I wonder how they are doing now. Han Zhao thought to himself. Half an hour earlier, the entrance to Felonia was a fault in the cliff. The pilgrims climbed along the cliff to the bottom. It was pitch black in front of them, and they could only vaguely feel that they were in a space that looked like a corridor. There were narrow walls on both sides, and there was an extended tunnel in front of them. A young pilgrim turned on his flashlight and saw his surroundings clearly. Everyone's jaws dropped, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Chapter 101. While repairing the vehicle, Han Zhao was also reflecting on the problems he had exposed in the battle. His current combat mode was mainly sniping, and the best strategy was to kite. However, his movement speed was not fast, so he should create some gadgets to increase his speed. The power leg was a good choice, but Han Zhao felt that it was too cumbersome. Coincidentally, with his current level and knowledge, he could create a new and more agile gadget. He felt that he could further improve his combat mode. For example, he could form a robot team to provide firepower support to make up for the weakness of his sniping attack speed. After all, the mechanic class was a wholesale manufacturer of equipment, so he could provide whatever he lacked. After quickly repairing the vehicle, Han Zhao drove Thorns back to the entrance of Felonia, following the coordinates marked on the radar. He immediately saw a series of footprints that extended to the edge of the cave and disappeared. After thinking for a while, he knew that the group of wanderers had gone down first. If it were a normal person, they might be worried that the good stuff inside would be taken away by others. However, Han Xiao felt that it was better this way. There were people helping him to detect the mines. Standing at the edge of the cave, Han Xiao looked down. The rock walls were clearly layered. At the intersection of the sun and the darkness, he could vaguely see rusty metal extending downwards. There are traces of man-made excavation on the rock walls. There is a fishy smell in the wind, the smell of rust. I have never seen this place before. Let's go down and take a look. Han Xiao had brought all his equipment. With the flashlight in his mouth, he climbed down the rock walls and shone the flashlight down from time to time. As he got further and further away from the ground, the sun gradually disappeared. He realized that the rock walls were curved. Soon, the sun disappeared and the surroundings were dark. The only source of light was the flashlight. This gloomy atmosphere made Han Xiao alert. He felt a chill in his heart. He wished that he could slow down his heartbeat so that he could relax. After climbing for about 3 minutes, the flashlight finally shone on the ground. It was a hollow metal floor. It was covered in dust, and there were thick spider webs in the gaps. No one had stepped on this floor for a long time. Han Xiao landed on the ground with a thud. The sound echoed far away. In this pitch-black environment, it was very quiet and creepy. The surroundings were dark and empty. The flashlight was like an isolated island in a dark sea. Rustling sounds came from the darkness, as if the sound of landing had attracted the attention of some unknown existence. He scanned his surroundings with the flashlight and found himself in a metal corridor. It seemed to be built in the style of a base. There were reinforced concrete everywhere, and the walls were covered with yellow-green rust oxide. There were strange, soft-bodied insects crawling in the rust. The hollow metal plate on the ground was covered in dust, and a series of new footprints extended forward, presumably from the group of pilgrims who had gone first. There should still be space below the metal floor. Han Xiao turned the flashlight to his feet and saw the scene below. Through the hollow metal plate under his feet, countless densely packed, red, compound eyes stared at him silently in the darkness. F*CK. Han Xiao's scalp went numb. He hurriedly retracted the light and listed the lower floor as a forbidden area. He carefully followed the footprints of the pilgrims. The surroundings were silent, and he could vaguely hear the rustling sounds of creatures crawling. When he listened carefully, they disappeared without a trace. It was very strange, and he could not help but feel nervous. After walking for a short distance, a fork appeared in front of him. The pilgrim's footprints disappeared at the fork on the right. Just as he was hesitating, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the fork on the right. It seemed that many people were running in panic and were rapidly approaching. Han Xiao quickly hid at the fork on the other side. He turned off the flashlight and put on the night vision goggles from Fabian. Run, run, monster! The pilgrims ran out of the fork in panic, as if they were running away from some unknown existence. Their clothes were stained with blood, and the number of people had decreased. What are they running away from? Han Xiao was puzzled. Suddenly, a beast-like roar came from the other side of the fork next door. It was hoarse and heavy, like the sigh of a giant. The echo buzzed. Just hearing this sound made his chi and blood surge. Disgust rose in his chest, and he was secretly frightened. This is the pressure of a high-level shapeshifter. It is definitely above level 40. The group of pilgrims were terrified. They did not know what terrifying existence they had seen. They used their hands and feet to crawl back in panic. However, the monster did not seem to have come out. The pilgrims sat down weakly, as if they had just survived a disaster. The monster did not make any sound of footsteps. Han Xiao remembered this in his heart. Joel was eaten by the monster. Boo-hoo! This place is too scary. The old pilgrim trembled, and his expression was dejected. It was as if his spirit had been sucked away. He said, "This is not Felonia. There is nothing here that we want. Let's leave this place quickly and find a real relic." A legendary magic relic should be filled with mystery and ancient aura, engraved with countless mysterious lines that he could not understand, and the main body of the relic should be stone. However, this was just a man-made steel base. He saw the emblem of the country that had passed away on the wall. This was a secret military base of the old country. The pilgrims were silent. A young man opened his mouth and said, "Maybe this is the real Falonia." The old country found the relic and built a base here in order to research the treasure of the desert. The treasure of the desert, the legendary treasure of Falonia, could control the Samar Desert. The old pilgrim shook his head and smiled bitterly. Impossible. If the old country had the treasure of the desert, it would not have been destroyed. This is not the place we are looking for. The real relic of Falonia is still hidden in a corner of the desert, the old pilgrim said firmly. The pilgrims supported each other and left. After listening to their discussion, Han Xiao finally solved some of his doubts. As far as he knew, there was no magic in the blue star. The so-called treasure of the desert could only be the result of some technological weapons. But people always have an inexplicable confidence and unrealistic fantasy about mysterious things that they do not understand. This reminded him of a story. When the flood came, a man prayed to the gods on the roof of his house. God sent a boat to save him, but he only hoped for a miracle. He did not know why the pilgrims believed that Falonia was related to magic, but it did not seem to have anything to do with him. Or was this a hint for another hidden mission? After calming himself down, Han Xiao waited until the pilgrims were far away before he showed himself. He was hesitant when facing the fork. The pilgrims had pointed out that there was a monster on the right, which was very dangerous. However, the left was unknown and could be even more dangerous. How should he choose? According to my experience, the pilgrims were acting as the guides of the dungeon. They had pointed out that there was a monster on the right. This was an obvious signal, but it could have two meanings. The first was to warn me not to go to the right because there was a monster. The second was to mislead me into going to the left. Han Xiao gritted his teeth and decided to go to the right. The unknown was scarier than the monster. He still remembered that there were many red eyes on the lower level. If he encountered those things, even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. He put on the thermal cutting gloves and did not use the flashlight. Instead, he used the night vision goggles and entered the fork on the right. His vision was dark green, and he could barely see the road ahead. There were huge footprints on the ground that were different from those of a human. They were probably left by the monster. It also had 2 legs and 5 toes. According to the height ratio of a human, this monster was about 3 meters tall. After walking for a while, a room with an open door appeared in front of him. The monster's footprints extended to the door and stopped abruptly. Han Xiao quietly approached the door and smelled the stench. It smelled like rotting meat and a hint of fresh blood. He stuck his head in and looked inside. A pair of bell-sized eyes were staring at him from a height less than half a meter away. Chapter 102. The magnetically controlled retractable armor was on standby. Han Xiao was ready to fight or escape. However, the owner of this pair of giant eyes was only looking in the direction of the door. It stood there motionless as if it did not see Han Xiao. Photophobia? Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. Luckily, he did not turn on the flashlight. Otherwise, he would have followed in the footsteps of the pilgrims. This monster was more than 3 meters tall. Its body was barely recognizable as a human. Its body was covered with bulging muscles. The layers of muscles were like small hills, but there was no sense of strength or beauty. It was like a bloated mountain of flesh. It only made people feel disgusted. The muscles were rotting, and there were even holes in some places. There were white and fat maggots crawling leisurely in the rotting flesh. Compared to the huge body, the head and neck were very small. The skin was pulled by the bulging muscles, and the facial features were extremely out of place. It looked very impactful. People could not help but think of words like deformed, painted ghost, and solar night. Han Xiao glanced at the layout of the room. There were a bunch of medical equipment and 4 experiment pods that he did not know what they were for. 2 of them were squashed flat, one had its door open, and the other was closed. The experimental pod was connected to a transparent container. There were only traces of dried fluorescent light left in the container. He carefully retreated. Seeing that the monster did not move, he breathed a sigh of relief and continued to move forward along the corridor. Soon, he encountered the second and third metal doors, but they were all blocked by the rusty alloy door. The card reader beside the door was almost rusted into iron slag and was completely scrapped. Han Xiao did not give up. He struggled to open the card reader and look at the model. He could not tell. That was not important. This should be a secret military base from decades ago. But for some reason, it was abandoned. It seems to be a biochemical experiment. It looks like it failed, or maybe it succeeded. That muscular guy does not look like a normal creature. Wait, this corridor is too long. How big is this base? The dark corridor was silent, and the deeper they went, the more the darkness seemed to condense. The vision range of the night vision goggles could only reach up to 5 meters away. Any further, and it would be pitch black. Han Xiao was glad that he didn't have claustrophobia or deep-sea phobia. The sense of crisis was like the tip of a knife hanging in front of him. Even with Han Xiao's big heart, he felt cold sweat coming out from all parts of his body. This was completely the instinctive reaction of a living creature in the face of an unknown danger. Being too nervous would affect the emergency response. He hurriedly said in his heart, "My heart is as clear as ice. I won't be alarmed, even if the sky collapses. I'll be calm when the wind blows." He didn't know what he was talking about, but he wasn't that nervous anymore. Along the way, he passed by more than a dozen doors. Only the door of the first room that the monster was in was open. The rest were sealed. Suddenly, they reached the end of the corridor. There was an even bigger door, which should be the main room. The alloy door was only lowered by a third, so they could enter. This was the second room that they could enter. According to the principles of the dungeon, they should be able to find some useful information here. The room seemed to be a large laboratory. There were rusted equipment everywhere. In the middle of the room was a row of experiment cabins similar to the first room. Looks like there's no danger. The dust choked him, and the smell of decay was pungent. A corpse was lying beside the experiment table. It had already dried up. There were pieces of cloth hanging from the body. It was vaguely possible that it used to be a white coat. Han Xiao found a file on the table beside the corpse. He reached out to sweep the dust away, trying to find some useful information. He looked at it and realized that it was a diary. July 13th, the professor made the 67th modification of the Felonious serum. He injected it into the mice for the experiment. The effect was very satisfactory. It finally met our expectations for the serum. If there are no abnormal reactions, we can start the human experiment. July 17th, the mouse test subject died. Another failure. The cause of death was organ failure. Experiment appendix torn. The professor seemed very depressed. He locked himself in the room. When I passed by, I heard the sound of him smashing things. July 20th, the professor insisted on the human experiment. The higher-ups approved the professor's request. This is crazy. Did he forget the consequences of the failure of test subject number 000? Experiment appendix torn. July 26th, the base issued a new rule. All researchers are to hand in any electronic devices and are not allowed to connect to the external network. Has the situation outside deteriorated to this extent? August 5th, this is the 7th day after test subject number 008 was injected with the Felonious serum. The test subject is doing well. There are no abnormal changes, but the professor is very disappointed. August 11th, the higher-ups asked us to evacuate. I heard that the battle was very bad. They want to preserve the remaining forces. Everyone is very scared, including the professor. No one wants to believe that we lost the war. Actually, I was already mentally prepared. Previously, the number of soldiers in the base had been decreasing. I knew that was because the front line had suffered heavy losses. Damn it, if I didn't change my profession from being a field doctor, I wouldn't be trapped in this depressing base. Everyone's face is lifeless. I can't see any vitality. I hate this place. August 14th, we will evacuate tomorrow. We will take refuge in Base 03. Time is tight. All the test data of the felonious serum has been backed up. The original data has been destroyed. The guard were really rude. They seemed to be preparing to self-destruct the base. The professor took a few samples of the felonious serum and destroyed the rest of the serum. The records ended here. Han Xiao flipped to the front again. There was no other valuable information. Many pages were torn. The corpses beside the wall showed that this group of people didn't evacuate. Some accidents happened between August 14th and 15th, which led to a large number of deaths. Most of them died in the lower levels of the base. Those red compound eyes were the eyes of the desert worm. What is the felonious serum? Han Xiao was curious. He suddenly remembered that the fluorescent liquid in the experiment chamber in the first room had dried up. It should be the residue of the serum. The experiment diary said that the professor had the serum. The corpses were most likely in the lower levels. Han Xiao didn't want to enter the forbidden area. It seemed that there was no chance for him to get the serum. Looks like I didn't find anything this time. Han Xiao shook his head. He looked up and held his breath. He saw a black box on the table in the middle of the room. He quickly walked up to it and opened the lid. There were 3 tubes of fluorescent liquid inside. At this moment, a string of ancient sayings rushed into his mind. At the end of the mountain and the river, there is no road, but at the end of the tunnel, there is always a village. You wear out iron shoes in vain, only to find it by chance. Suddenly looking back, that person is in the waning light. Looking at the body at his feet, Han Zhao's mouth twitched. Could this be the professor? He grabbed the 3 tubes of liquid and sized them up. How can this color be called a serum? You have received felonious serum, incomplete, X3 felonious serum, incomplete, a type of biochemical medicine that strengthens the body. It is not perfect yet. There is a chance of mutation after use. P.S. This may be the last 3 tubes of felonious serum. A biochemical potion. The side effects of an imperfect potion are very serious. This is an unfinished product. If I use it, I'll probably become like that muscular stick. That's too scary. Han Xiao shuddered. There shouldn't be anything else here. I should leave quickly. This place is too creepy. Han Xiao turned around and suddenly realized that the muscular stick had appeared behind him without him noticing. It was staring at him from above without making a sound. Chapter 103. The monster raised its thick arm and smashed it down like it was swatting a fly. The huge force caused the air pressure to suffocate Han Xiao, and the stench assaulted his nostrils. Han Zhao's reaction was lightning fast. He slid like a loach and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. The strong wind blew his hair into a mess. The monster's palm hit the ground with a loud bang. A hole was formed in the ground, and a circle of dust was raised. Han Xiao quickly held his breath and squinted to prevent the dust from flying in. He pulled out the berserk eagle and fired. The bullet hit the monster's rotten flesh, and the stench of pus splashed out. You have dealt 57 damage to test subject 002. You have entered combat mode. Based on your level, you have received the following information. Test subject 002 level, 42 class. Low-level biological aberration. Yendi to HP conversion ratio, 1. 100 attributes, 65 STR, 20 DX, 60 Yendi, 90, 1 INT MYS. Charm. Luck. Energy, 0 energy rank. Health points, 1854/7800 continuous decay. Status, severe decay, minus 25 DF, minus 30 Yendi. Severe deterioration of all senses talent. Low-level aberration, plus 5 STR, plus 10 Yendi. Intermediate strength and life. Additional increase in HP conversion ratio, 130. Skills, silent walk. LV12, smash LV8, charge LV5. The level cap of all professions was not 10. Some high-end professions and special professions had a higher level cap. Biological aberration was a special type of profession. Han Xiao fired both guns consecutively. The large caliber penetrating bullets bombarded test subject 002's body, creating bullet holes. The sound of gunfire could be heard from afar. After making such a big commotion, I have to end this quickly. Han Xiaoxin's heart sank. Fortunately, Test subject 002's condition was very bad. If it was full health, he would have turned around and run immediately. Test subject 002 did not seem to feel any pain. It lowered its head and rushed over in large strides. It gave Han Xiao the feeling of a steam locomotive crashing into him. This caused his heart to involuntarily shrink. Han Xiao sheathed his gun and pulled out his katana. The retractable katana slashed viciously at the monster's head. With a clang, the katana penetrated the monster's skull, causing pus to splatter everywhere. He had also taken a lot of damage from Test Subject 002's collision. He only had time to put his hands in front of him to block the attack. He felt like he was facing a charging rhinoceros head-on. He couldn't stabilize his body and stumbled backward, knocking over 2 test benches. His arms were in great pain, and his chest was filled with a stifling sensation. The contusion status appeared on the interface. The katana was embedded in Test Subject 002's skull, and yellowish-white pus continuously flowed out from the wound. The monster opened its bloody mouth wide as if it was roaring, but its decayed vocal cords could only produce hoarse cries. Both of its fists carried a strong gust of wind and dust with them. However, Han Xiao could clearly see the trajectory of the attack. His 48 points of dexterity were more than double the monster's. The collision just now was clearly the monster's skill, and it could not be used continuously. Han Xiao also took the opportunity to test whether the enemy had any vital points. The conclusion was very clear. This monster really did not have a brain. Even if its head was chopped off, it could still move. Han Xiao brushed his fists and dodged. He quickly went behind Test Subject 002. He rubbed his palms together and activated the thermoelectric incisor gloves. He pressed them on the back of Test Subject 002's heart. The surface of the gloves lit up with a dazzling blue and white light. It was extremely dazzling in the dark. The contact area exploded with an extremely high temperature, quickly burning through the rotting flesh of the monster. A burnt smell quickly filled the air. His palms sank into a viscous organ. He violently stirred, and white smoke rose from the wound. Test Subject 002 kept waving its arms, but Han Xiao narrowly avoided all of them. The thermoelectric incisor glove's continuous damage was extremely high. In just 10 seconds, it had dealt no less than 800 damage. It almost burned through Test Subject 002's body. Suddenly, the gloves flickered a few times and the light dimmed. They had run out of energy. The high-energy battery could only support the operation of the gloves for a few minutes. Sully had been fighting with these gloves for a long time, and there was only a trace of energy left. Han Xiao quickly retreated and used his dexterity to fight. This big guy was like a low-level beast with no intelligence at all. Although its attributes were high, Han Xiao's dexterity made it easy for him to deal with it. Only tackle posed a threat. With the help of the terrain and obstacles, Han Xiao finally killed Test Subject 002 one shot after another. The monster swayed around like a drunk and fell down with a loud bang. Pus slowly flowed out from the muzzles all over its body. You have killed Test Subject 002, LV-42. You have received 32,000 EXP. As you have killed a target 10 levels above you, you have received an additional 280% EXP. Total EXP, 89600. Your damage output, 23. 7%. You have received an additional 21,235, 23, 7%. EXP. The rustling sound became louder and louder, as if it was right next to his ears. There were many densely packed appendages coming out from the gaps of the hollowed-out metal plates under his feet. Han Zhao's expression suddenly changed. He ran back the way he came. There was a loud sound of metal colliding with metal in the distance, accompanied by a beast-like roar. He could vaguely see something moving toward him. All signs indicated that he had triggered some sort of event by killing this monster. The one that Han Xiao had killed was Test Subject 002, and the diary stated that the last test subject was 008. There were a few more monsters like 002, and they might even be stronger. They were wandering around some corner of the base. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, if he didn't run now, was he going to stay for the new year? Surrounded by all kinds of noises, Han Shao ran as fast as he could. Fortunately, he was not in any danger. He quickly climbed up the cliff and returned to the surface. The sun shone on his body, and his tense nerves gradually relaxed. The atmosphere in the abandoned base was too gloomy. The sense of danger everywhere made him feel as if he was walking on a tightrope. Only now did he feel better. In his arms were the 3 vials of felonious serum. Han Shao was not sure how valuable they were, but now was not the time to check his loot. It would not take long for the various forces in Samar to discover the abnormality in this place. With that in mind, Han Shao immediately drove away. An hour after he left, many vehicles arrived at the entrance of Felonia and surrounded the entrance of the cave. The leaders of the various forces hurriedly informed their financial backers, while the armed forces stared at each other covetously. The financial backers had given the order to explore the place first. Therefore, the armed forces temporarily stopped fighting and sent out small teams into the base. The dark and gloomy atmosphere was slightly diluted. There are desert worms in the lower level. Ask the people above to send down the flamethrowers. Someone was holding a cone-shaped flamethrower and burning the dead insects through the hollow metal board, making ear-piercing screeching noises. The smell of roasted insect meat mixed with the rotten smell of the base was nauseating. The desert worms were about 40 to 80 centimeters long. They looked like centipedes with shells on their backs. There were tentacles and red compound eyes on their heads. Their chelicerae were strong enough to break a human's bones and were used for feeding. There were thousands of desert worms in the abandoned base, and they soon started to counterattack. The worms climbed to the upper level and swept in from both ends of the tunnel. The mercenaries temporarily formed an alliance and formed a defensive base. They used flamethrowers and bullets to repel the worms. When the situation was stabilized, the worms suddenly dispersed. A few rotting giant bodies rushed out. They walked silently and knocked away a few mercenaries while braving the flames and bullets. They created a gap in the mercenaries' formation. The mercenaries were shocked. What the hell is this? It's disgusting. Quickly fill in the gaps. F*CK. The worms are coming in. Kill the monsters first. Wait, there are 3 more monsters. Requesting firepower support. I repeat, requesting firepower support. The sound of gunfire lasted for a long time before it turned into a deathly silence. The ground was littered with burnt worm corpses and bullet casings. The few test subjects were riddled with holes. The mercenaries had suffered heavy losses, but at least the battle was over. Gatton kicked a test subject's corpse and thought to himself, "This seems to be a biochemical test subject." After tidying up the battlefield, the mercenaries began to explore the base from top to bottom. They blasted open the sealed rooms, but they didn't find much. Most of the things inside were rusty, experimental equipment. There were, however, some paper records of the base that had been plundered. The most valuable things were the traces of the dried blood serum and the test subjects' corpses. The people behind these mercenaries needed these things. They might be able to find a specialized biochemical laboratory to replicate the effects of the serum. However, from the looks of the test subjects' deformities, the serum was still incomplete. When the mercenaries arrived at the large laboratory where Han Shao had been, they were stunned. There was a new test subject, 002, lying there with fresh wounds. Someone beat us to it. Chapter 104. The trip to the Samar Desert had come to an end. The time limit for the mission was 15 days, but Han Shao had only spent 6 days to complete it. The Fabian Corporation's transport plane landed at the Morning Wind City Airport. Han Shao immediately rushed to Hotel Vitalia and went to the Blood Pact Society's floor to submit the mission. The waiter quickly reported, and the person in charge personally came to receive him. In a separate VIP room, Han Shao leaned on the sofa and waited for the person in charge to confirm the mission details. On a certain floor, A darknet recorder opened the Rose Militant's bounty page and wrote down the latest information. 688-4. 1. Codename, Mr. Black. Net. Mission completed. Time. 688. 4. 7-inch mission canceled. This information was sent to the database. At the same time, all the assassins in the Blood Pact Society received a message informing them that the Rose Militant's bounty had been canceled. Mr. Black, your bounty mission has been verified. We will transfer the reward to your account. Ding. Han Xiao looked at his computer and saw that his account had increased by 3 million. He had more than 5 million in his bank account. He realized that doing bounties was really quick to earn money. It was even faster than making machines. The players who had completed the Rose Militant mission in the past seemed to be a small team of 15. Everyone shared the reward, but Han Xiao had completed it alone and earned a lot. You have completed Bounty Hunter, Rose Militant. You have received 150,000 EXP. Hidden requirements. Felonia Project Discovery has been completed. You have received 250,000 EXP. You have received a special reward, Intermediate Gene Blending Potion for 37% low concentration. X1 Blood Pact Society's favorability increased by 550 points. Current neutral, 550/1000. Scorp's level assassin. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. The Gene Blending Potion was an unconventional game item. Its function was to reduce the failure rate and mutation rate of the biochemical potion. Biochemical potions were a common type of potion that increased one's attributes. However, any biochemical potion had its own risks. There was a chance of lowering one's attributes and causing mutation. Biochemical potions also conflicted with each other. The Gene Blending Potion could make up for the shortcomings of the biochemical potion to a certain extent. I see. If I didn't enter the abandoned base and didn't find the Felonia serum, this unknown reward wouldn't have been effective. Han Xiao figured out the crux of the matter. The reward was linked to his actions. This was an additional reward for the exploration. The 002 test subject was equivalent to a mini-boss guarding the serum. His cautious behavior during exploration allowed him to avoid many difficult checkpoints. The footprints of the pilgrims were a guide. If he ignored the guide and went in the opposite direction, he would be surrounded by a bunch of experimental subjects and desert worms. If he chose the left side because he was afraid of monsters, he would miss the opportunity to obtain the serum. If he entered the right corridor with a flashlight, he would trigger the battle of test subject 002 at the first door. The narrow space of the corridor made it impossible to dodge, so it was difficult to move forward. He could only exit the corridor. If one was greedy and wanted to continue exploring after obtaining the serum, the consequences would be the same as the first rule. This reward was truly a pleasant surprise. Han Xiao couldn't wait to study it. After handing in the mission, he was about to leave when the person in charge suddenly said, "Mr. Black, may I ask if you can stay in Morning Wind City for the next 2 days? There's an important guest who wants to see you." Honored guest. Han Xiao was puzzled. The messenger of the Rothschild family, the client of the Rose Militant's bounty mission. He wishes to meet you. Could it be that he's here for Felonia? Han Zhao's eyes flashed. Please tell him that I'm happy to meet him. The person in charge was overjoyed. Okay. After leaving Hotel Victoria, Han Xiao returned to Antonio's base and went straight to the workshop that was temporarily allocated to him. He took out a tube of Felonia serum and a low-concentration gene blending agent that was rewarded by the mission. The Felonia serum had a fluorescent yellow color. It was well-sealed and had not deteriorated even after a few decades. Low-concentration gene blending agent. Silver specks sparkled in the solution, and it was as viscous as mercury. To use or not to use it? That was the question. The Felonia serum was a hidden item that he had never seen before. However, the mid-level gene blending agent could greatly reduce the risk and was very reliable. Han Xiao calculated the success rate and the losses. In the end, he decided to do it with the gene blending agent. Even if the serum failed, he would not become a muscle dummy like the experimental subjects. He took out a syringe and a catheter inserted it into the vein in his arm, and injected the gene blending agent. A cool feeling flowed through his blood and circulated throughout his body. It was as refreshing as eating ice cream on a hot summer day. Even his soul felt calmer. The gene blending agent was harmless to the body. If it was not activated by the biochemical agent, it would gradually dissipate. Han Xiao took a deep breath and started to inject the felonious serum. The fluorescent agent was injected into his blood through the catheter. The swelling sensation exploded in his body. Han Xiao gritted his teeth. His whole body was in so much pain that he could not control it. He felt as if his body had exploded into a paste. His bones were crushed, his veins were torn, and his flesh was melting. The inhumane pain struck his brain again and again, and he almost fainted. When players used items and created machines, there was a limit to the amount of pain they could feel. However, he wanted to experience it in real life. Of course, to him, the benefits far outweighed the disadvantages. He had already gained a lot from it, but he had to bear the cost of 100% of his senses. After an unknown amount of time, the pain slowly subsided. Han Zhao's eyes were bloodshot. He allowed a deep breath. He felt that his nerves had been severely damaged. He lowered his head and looked at his body. Luckily, he did not become muscular. He still looked the same as before, and he still looked as handsome as before. He did not have the energy to look at the interface just now. Only now did he realize that the interface was flooded with messages. You have used the felonious serum. Incomplete. Assimilation progress. 12%. Mutation test. Test passed. Gene blending agent reduces failure rate. You have used the felonious serum. Incomplete. Assimilation progress. 46%. Mutation test passed. You have used the felonious serum. Incomplete. Assimilation progress. 73%. Mutation test passed. You have used the felonious serum. Incomplete. Assimilation progress. 100%. Assimilation complete. Compatibility. Excellent. You have received 3 STR and 5 END. You have received the talent Elementary Strength and Life. Han Zhao's body trembled. He looked at the interface in disbelief. There was a new talent Elementary Strength and Life. This is a molding talent. Han Xiao was shocked. There was a very special type of talent called molding talents. At least to his knowledge, he had never heard of a player obtaining a molding talent. Molding talents were exclusive to NPCs and bosses. They were extremely powerful and rare even for NPCs. The effect of Elementary Strength and Life increased his health points from endurance. The ratio was 1:15. In other words, he now had 66 points of endurance, which was equivalent to 990 extra health points. His health points had almost doubled. He now had more than 2,000 health points. Furthermore, this effect increased his health points along with his endurance. At level 30, his health points were already more than 2,000. Even the level 38 Pugilist Pan Kuang did not have as much health as he did now. Is it because my template is an NPC? Han Xiao guessed. He could even issue missions to players. It was not impossible for him to have a molding talent. If a player used the felonious serum, they would only gain attribute points and would not awaken any talents. If this talent is paired with my magnetically controlled armor and future mechanical armor, I'll be able to make my enemies vomit. Han Xiao was pleasantly surprised. He was very satisfied with this talent. His health had increased by a large margin. The reward from this mission were quite bountiful. Mission rewards, killing enemies, and crafting rewards had accumulated more than 700,000 experience points. He counted the blueprints. There were 19 of them. He only needed one more to complete the class change mission. Han Xiao thought for a while and decided to create equipment that increased his movement speed. Do you wish to proceed with Knowledge Fusion, LV, for Basic Electromagnetic Theory, LV, 3 Basic Energy Theory, LV, for Basic Mechanical Engineering, LV2? 20,000 experience points. There were quite a few blueprints for this combination. Han Xiao was not sure if he could get the equipment he wanted. He planned to try the fusion 3 times. If he could not get the equipment after 3 tries, he would try to create his own. On the third try, he got the equipment that met his requirements, the skateboard shoes. Han Xiao scratched his head. One of the first two blueprints was completely useless. He could not say whether he was lucky or not. Being able to fuse the blueprints saved him a lot of time. The full name of the skateboard shoes was electromagnetic levitation power boots. It could be used alone or mounted on a small mechanical suit. It could greatly increase one's movement speed without hindering one's ability to dodge attacks. The other two blueprints were coincidentally created. One of them was called Swarm, and the other was called Heart. You have completed the class change mission. Class change successful. You have received a new class, Trainee Mechanic. Plus 50 energy, plus 1 DX, plus 1 END, plus 4 INT. You have received 3 free attribute points. You have received 1 potential point. You have learned Fine Repair. You have learned Intermediate Strengthening. The 2 core skills of the Mechanic class, Repair and Strengthening, had finally evolved. The Trainee Mechanic class was the 3rd stage of the Mechanic class. It did not require a lot of experience points to level up from level 1, because it was a class with a maximum level of 15. Han Xiao leveled up 3 times in a row. His total level was 34, and he put all his free attribute points into intelligence, as usual. Han Xiao still had some experience points left. After thinking about it, he decided to level up Sliding Shot. This skill had helped him many times. Furthermore, the Mechanic class lacked combat skills, so every active skill was very important. He was not in a hurry to level up Overload. The effect of level 1 was already strong enough. Sliding Shot was leveled up to level 4, and its effect was stronger. At the same time, the energy cost was increased to 8 points. Han Xiao now had almost 900 points of energy, which was very plentiful. He used up all his experience points again. The huge amount of experience points had been exchanged for combat power. His energy rank was over 500, and with the help of his machinery, it was close to 700. With his current strength, he could easily defeat Pan Kuang without Norse's character summon card. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.